It's not the truth.
So it goes, and so it goes, and so it goes, and so it goes.
Ticked off, tee off. This is it.
Scubbity bobo. Scubbity dog. Moving Wisconsin forward, one joke at a time. This is Kristen Bry with As Goes Wisconsin.
Yada, yada, yada.
Hello, Wisconsin!
Does this hurt him? Does this help him? How are you feeling about the unprecedented historical moment that came last evening of former President Donald J. Trump being indicted? Does it help him or does it hurt him? 844-967-2789. Jane Matnair, does this help him or hurt him?
Certainly for some, they think it's going to help him. There's at least the narrative that's being spun right now is, this is a political witch hunt. And if they can do this to him, they can do it to you. And I just want to point out that, yes, if you commit a crime, they can indict you too.
If you also commit a crime,
they can do that.
You too can feel the pressure of the law.
Yeah.
I think this helps him in the primary. Potentially. I mean, he was already leading in the primary. I don't know if this helps him in the general, though. I think he's still lost in 2020. And I don't know anything that's happened since 2020 that will get him to regain swing voters, never Trumper Republicans, moderates. Like, I just don't see any of this being winning back votes but I do see it as people who are with Trump until he, is in his grave.
Yeah. To the bitter end.
Like, of course, this is going to help them, like, make them want to double down. But I don't know how this helps him in a general election should he win the nomination, which maybe this does help him win the nomination. But I just don't see that being the case. So we would love to hear from you. Will this help Trump? Does this hurt Trump? 844-967-2789. That's 844-96.
Party.
But happy Friday, everyone. This has been a great week of shows. And so we're going to round out the rest of this week today, still being a great show. We're obviously going to talk about our feelings about Trump. How did you feel when you got the news yesterday? But also wanted to talk about some other headlines that are really important that might get buried at the bottom of the hour, this first hour. And then at noon, we are going to be joined by Scott Ross, Democratic analyst, and Bill McCoshen, Republican strategist. I don't really know the difference between what makes one an analyst versus one a strategist. Maybe we'll ask them that.
Yes, we will find out.
But we are going to hear from them on, obviously, I think my first question to them will be, does this hurt or help Trump? But then also, does this hurt or help our election? Like, who does this hurt and who does this help for our election that is in 4 days? 4 days until
big election.
Big election on Tuesday. If you have voted, we would love to celebrate you. If you're planning to vote, we will celebrate you. Did you vote?
Not yet.
Yeah, me either.
I
think I'm going to go day of.
Really? See, and I was going to, and now I think I might go today.
Okay.
Because he's expected to turn himself in on Tuesday.
So what, you think that?
I don't know. It just makes me twitchy.
Okay.
It just makes me a little twitchy. So I think I'm gonna go vote today.
Okay.
Because today is the last day for early voting, isn't it?
I don't want to be careful because I know it changes depending on which location you're talking about. And so I don't know when it ends in Milwaukee versus Madison versus every location. So I don't want to say, yes, it ends today because I think some places could still have it available tomorrow. But you can check. You can check in on myvote.wi.gov. You can check for when early voting ends, if you can still do it today or this weekend. But regardless, you can certainly vote on April 4th, this Tuesday. So we're going to be talking to Bill McCoshen and Scott Ross about where we're at with 4 days out, and also kind of predictions for two guys who are veterans in Wisconsin politics. depending on the outcome, what changes? And I think that's the thing that I'm really interested in is it's one thing to get through the election. It's another thing to see how that shifts the political landscape, because unfortunately that is the world we live in now, where this has become a political election.
Yes.
It is a judicial election, but in practice, it is also now a political one, which is not the way it was supposed to be. And yet, here we are.
Here we are.
And then we're going to, go ahead.
844-967-2789. Does this help Trump or hurt Trump? How are you feeling about this? Happy, sad, angry, skeptical? Texter from the 414. If you can't go after ex-presidents for breaking the law, then you cannot go after the common man when they break the law.
Yeah.
And I completely agree. And I think it's interesting that all of the Republicans now who are defending Donald Trump and calling this a witch hunt and it's politicized and are all the same people who were dancing with joy when Michael Cohen got convicted for this very same crime.
I know, and I don't really quite understand the cognitive dissonance between Michael Cohen going to jail for this and then thinking, well, Trump didn't do anything wrong. Then why did we convict and charge and convict someone else for like carrying this out? And how did that happen? And yet with Trump, he did nothing wrong. Because I think that's the thing. It's almost like there's so many things that we don't actually believe to be true on both sides, right? As far as sometimes it's, as Jane likes to say, some of us don't agree that gravity exists. And so sometimes it feels like the details of this case and what is and is not legal. Granted, it could be, I think there's 30 different counts, which is a lot.
It is.
But there's still some legal people saying this is not the strongest case. It could get thrown out, yada, yada, yada. But it's still like he affected the 2016, he tried to affect the 2016 election by shutting someone up.
By suppressing the story.
And so that is fact.
Leroy checking in from Milwaukee. Leroy, what do you want to say?
Yes. First of all, Donald Trump failed to protect the country. The duty of the president is to protect the country, and he did not do that. He allowed the country to be attacked. Right there, that was wrong. Then he ordered the assassination of his vice president. So this guy is like I don't know. All I know is that he violated so many things. Then he allowed the people to be killed. Nancy Pelosi's husband got beat in the head with a hammer because of his actions. So Trump is bad news. That's all I want to say.
All right. Leroy.
Thank you for the call, Leroy.
Thanks for checking in.
I think that's the thing that I see as I'm reading more and more of this. There's certainly people who feel like, is this the best case to lead with? Because it's not like he's not being investigated for multiple other things.
Yes.
And I think this is such an early stage of this process for any one of these. This is early stage for this case, and this indictment is very early as far as what happens from here. I mean, he still has to turn himself in, which that will be potentially a whole circus. I would say, you know what I would love to see? I would love to be, because you can basically make a bet on anything, right? Like there is
pretty much
online markets for political campaigns, for how long Rihanna was going to sing and which song she was going to sing for the Super Bowl. I would love to know if there's betting right now on whether or not, like who makes a t-shirt out of Trump's mugshot? Does he do it?
Oh,
does both the right and the left make, once and who knows if it becomes public, but he will get there will be a mugshot. That is the law. Like he has to get his picture taken once he is fingerprinted and takes a mugshot.
And get fingerprinted, yes.
And so who uses that picture to make merch? Because I feel like there's a lot of people on both sides of the aisle that are going to do that. But like we're very at the beginning of this circus and what it gets turned into, let alone the other investigations that are ongoing. And so, it's like to get all of my energy out on this first history. It is history has been made though.
Yes,
This is the first time that this has happened. But it's interesting, and we could talk about this a little in the next segment, but we still want to hear from you on whether or not you think this hurts Trump or helps Trump in his pursuit to be elected again. 844-967-2789. I think it helps him in the primary, hurts him in the general. That's where I come down on this, because I just don't think this is appealing to the people who would like to go back to normalcy. Because what's amazing to me, I was thinking about this on the way in, is that how in the history books of 100 years from now, how much this guy will be written about of how much he impacted our country. And that is, to me, so depressing as far as this guy. There's no way around it. Like, there's no way around to talk about how this guy, for what will be at least 8, maybe 12, I don't know, but the somewhere around a decade that was like the decade of Trump, where he was the center of attention for so long, and the ire of one side, and also the ire for some people on the other side. And like his relevance will never be able to be negated, and how much it impacted the country. And
Without
it's like this dumpy real estate snake oil salesman was able to do this to arguably one of the best countries in the history of the world. Like, wow.
Yeah. It's a lot to absorb.
It's a lot to absorb. All right. Well, I know we're still taking your calls. I think we have one caller who's going to hold on until we get back. But how do you feel? Angry, skeptical, elated? And do you think this will hurt him or help him? We're talking about the Trump indictment. 844-967-2789. We'll be back in just a minute.
Man, ain't that news? Ain't that news? Ain't that good news? Man, 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 ain't that news? My baby's coming home tomorrow. Ain't that good news? Man, ain't that news? Good news. Good news. Ain't that good news?
Hey everybody, how we doing? I'm Charlie Barons, inviting you to join me Saturdays and or Sundays at noon. It's a horse apiece, whatever you decide. We're doing the Cripes Cast, where we talk to people for and or from the Midwest, and it's more fun than a 6-pack of Jolly Good. Okay, the pride of Random Lake, that Jolly Good is. Anyway, it's on your Civic Media station and the Civic Media app. And do me a favor, tell your folks I says hi. Okay, real good.
Monday morning at 8, don't miss Under the Helmet with the Gravedigger, featuring legendary Gilbert Brown and Earl Ingram. Football, life, and fun.
Earl, you've been driving a Yugo. They just gave you a brand new Ferrari with turbo boost. So enjoy it, brother.
Under the Helmet with the Gravedigger, Gilbert Brown and Earl Ingram. Monday morning at 8 on the Shaw, 540 AM and 101.1 FM WAUK.
Up North News Radio is Wisconsin's new choice for progressive talk about important state issues, from the team that brings you the news through social media, newsletters, and here on the radio. I'm Pat Kreitlow. Join me weekday mornings from 6 to 8 a.m.
Fear you may be missing out? We're always streaming on TuneIn and the Civic Media app. Enjoy listening live or catch up by finding the podcast at civicmedia.us or wherever you enjoy listening to your podcasts.
Here's your updated forecast on the Shaw. Overcast skies this afternoon with isolated thunderstorms likely. Highs around 63. Winds out of the south 10 to 15 miles an hour. A mixture of precipitation likely tonight. Lows dip down to about 34. Cloudy. Mixed precipitation likely again tomorrow. 39. A dusting of snow tomorrow. For Civic Media, I'm meteorologist Derek Height. Currently, it's 54 degrees.
A progressive voice from Beaver Dam to Kenosha. WAUK 540 AM. Always streaming at WAUKradio.com.
Welcome back to As Goes Wisconsin, and we are talking about and asking you, does this hurt Trump or does this help Trump? And of course, we are talking about the major news that broke last night, and I imagine is everywhere on every news outlet today, which is that Trump has been indicted. And of course, there is still details missing as far as what the indictments are over.
Right, because it's still sealed.
That's still sealed. We know there's around 30 counts. There's speculation on when he will if and when he will turn himself in. So there's still a lot unknown, but at least the indictment has happened. And of course, now there is lots of people who are very angry. I'm sure there's lots of people out there who are very happy. I am not one of them. I am. This is not something I'm celebrating over, but we have to talk about it because this is massive historic news. And my question is, does this help him or hurt him as he is the front runner for the Republican Party for president in 2024?
844-967-2789. Texter from the 414. Trump's problem is that he isn't willing to admit he did something wrong and kept pushing and stalling, hoping he could lie or bully his way out of it. If he had admitted his error, it probably would have gone away and not been a factor anymore. How many times I was told as a kid, when you do something wrong and you get into trouble, just admit it. I did something wrong, not make a federal case out of it. It could hurt him worse than we think. At his booking, they're going to take DNA. That could answer the question if he attacked E. Jean Carroll, because that case is still going to trial, and that's supposed to go to trial next month.
Is that soon?
I believe so. I believe it's in April. Yeah.
You know, it's interesting to me, if you think about all of the things that Trump is juggling between literally running for president, which that by its own is a Herculean feat, no matter what. And that's not to say that he is I'm just saying, like, that is a lot. And then on top of that, to be managing all of these different investigations that are circling him, and he's not a spring chicken. So it's like, what kind of energy drinks is he drinking that, like, he is handling all of this? And I thought that this morning too. I was like, at some point, does he just snap, or does he really have the mental fortitude to be doing all of this at once and not having mental breakdown?
844-967-2789. Will this help Donald Trump or hurt Donald Trump? CJ is on the line. CJ, what do you want to say?
Well, thanks for taking my call. This helps Trump as far as popularity goes, because this is all political, but it's sad for the country.
It is sad for the country, CJ.
It is political because statute of limitations are going to run out of this, have already run out of this, and that's why this political Alvin Bragg ran on one thing, not solving crime in New York, but getting Donald Trump.
CJ, let me ask you a question. CJ,
song and dance.
CJ,
pardon me.
Let me ask you a question. Then why was Michael Cohen prosecuted under the Trump administration, sentenced and sent to prison? Was that a political witch hunt?
He lied to Congress and he had tax evasion. Look up his 8 accounts and charges. It wasn't that it was a campaign finance thing, and that's what this is supposedly for Trump. We haven't seen it because this Alvin Bragg is going to keep it secret as long as he can.
Okay, thanks for calling, CJ. That's good. I'm producer. Producer rules.
Producer rules. I was going to ask him because I feel like CJ doesn't call into our show a lot. He calls into a lot of other civic media shows a lot. And I was going to ask him because I think we clearly know how he feels about it.
Sure. And CJ is not alone.
No, and CJ's not alone. But I was interested to see if when he says this, so he's definitively that this helps Trump, if he's talked to friends about it, and if that is the conversations that are being had. Because I would say almost everything I've seen, I think Vox this morning put out a conversation with they had asked a variety of different strategists, both Republican and Democratic, saying, the case on whether or not the indictment may help or hurt Trump. And at least the way I read it, there was 2 separate Republican advisors who said this helps him, but they weren't so confident that this helps him in the general. And then there was a Democratic strategist and a Republican strategist who said this hurts Trump. And they both said this is, kind of what I had said as far as like moderates and swing votes, and that this doesn't necessarily help him get closer to the general. But some of them also thought this doesn't necessarily help him in the primary either. And so it is, we will see how it plays out.
We certainly will.
But certainly one thing as far as, I love historians. I love historians who can bring back things that I didn't even know was a thing. Do you know who Eugene Debs is?
Oh, Eugene. No.
Good old Eugene.
No.
Eugene Debs ran for president 5 times for the Socialist Party in the early 20th century and was a dedicated union leader who helped organize his fellow railway workers into the first major railway union in the United States. That was eventually crushed, and he was jailed in the aftermath of the Pullman strike of 1894. Debs was also a dedicated opponent of the U.S. entry into World War I, convicted of sedition in 1918, and jailed for speaking out against the war. And from the Atlanta federal prison, he ran for president in 1920 and received over 3% of the national vote, with almost 1 million votes cast for him as convict number 9653. So it is not unprecedented for someone to run for president from jail or from prison. So
Texter from the 920 says, I think it hurts him in both the primary and the general, but not by much. Only people who are excited to have a bad boy candidate are the solid 30% who will never, ever leave him.
There you go. All right. Well, we'll keep taking your calls. 844-967-2789. Does this hurt him? Does this help him? We're talking about Trump. And we'll get to some other very important headlines that should not be glossed over when we come back.
WAUK 540 AM, New Berlin's choice for news talk radio. Streaming 24/7 at WAUKradio.com.
CBS News special report. Manhattan DA Alvin Bragg says in a letter this morning to top House Republicans their demands for information on the Trump case, which led to an indictment of the former president, amount to unlawful political interference. CBS's Robert Costa on what he's learned.
Sources tell CBS News the Manhattan DA has documents on hand of financial transactions of various schemes from Trump's inner circle in 2016 that have not yet been made public and could be central to this case.
Trump attorney Joe Tacopina expects an arraignment with no handcuffs.
It looks like possibly Tuesday, but I don't know yet. And as far as how that all happens, this is a case of first impression for all of us. You have Secret Service involved, NYPD, Court Officers Union. So I'm not sure exactly how it plays out, but we'll get through it.
CBS's Major Garrett.
There is a possibly predictable, possibly understandable rallying around the president, that this is a prosecution, an indictment that is based, at least in part, according to those who support the former president, in politics.
CBS News special report.
WAUK 540 AM, Brookfield's choice for news talk radio. Streaming 24/7 at WAUKradio.com.
For Civic Media News, I'm Terry Bell. Here's what you need to know. University of Wisconsin students will see their tuition go up for the first time in 10 years. The Board of Regents approved the increase yesterday. Wisconsin enacted a tuition freeze in 2013, but UW System President Jay Rothman says the freeze is unsustainable now with increasing costs and inflation. A man accused of threatening Governor Evers is taking a plea deal. Michael Yacker of Windsor is instead pleading guilty to threatening former Wisconsin Highway Commissioner Gerald Mandley. In exchange, he had 7 other charges dropped, including sending threatening messages to Evers. He faces 5 years in prison when he's sentenced in June. In sports, the Bucks lost big to the Celtics last night, and Minnesota State's Mike Hastings is the Badgers' new men's hockey coach. I'm Terry Bell, and this is Civic Media News.
The Civic Media team would like to say congratulations. More than 200 Wisconsin businesses and nonprofits are receiving a free advertising campaign through our one-day $1 million advertising giveaway. If you missed out, our local sales team would still love to help you with your own campaign. Go to civicmedia.us and click on the sponsorship tab. Again, civicmedia.us and sponsorship. New and still growing. Advertise today with the Civic Media network of radio stations.
On Tuesday, April 4th, we have a chance to elect people who will do the right thing for Wisconsin and for Waukesha. We need experienced leaders we can trust. Vote for Janet Protasewicz for Supreme Court, Fred Stramp for Waukesha County Circuit Court, and Diane Voigt for Waukesha School Board. Janet, Fred, Diane, because we can trust them. Vote on April 4th. Your vote and your voice matter. Paid for by Blue Sky Waukesha.
Hey, this is Matt from Design Garden. Remember when the internet was new? Back then, you had to leave your house to start a business. Companies used to pay programmers bags of cash to get online.
I feel like I just heard
now,
something
small
fall.
businesses can get online with a Facebook business page, or Squarespace, or Google My Business, or WordPress. But which tools should you use? Can you afford to go down the wrong path? Design Garden uses modern tools to build your website the right way. Find us online at design.garden. Again, that's design.garden.
Dad, I picked up your pills, made your lunch, and your laundry is done.
When you care for a loved one, you take care of everything. But are you taking care of yourself? Find free care guides at aarp.org/caregiving. Brought to you by AARP and the Ad Council.
Here's the news, coming to you every hour on the hour. The weather's fine, but there may be a meteor shower.
Welcome back to As Goes Wisconsin. Will this hurt Trump? Will this help Trump? We're obviously talking about his indictment last night. Still waiting on more details. It is a developing story, and it will be a developing story for a very long time, probably up until the 2024 election in November. The never-ending saga. It'll be like the documentaries or the movies about him will have to be multi-episode series.
Well, just for all the potential indictments. I mean, there's, like you mentioned earlier, there are several things going on. This is not the only case. There's a case in Georgia with him allegedly trying to overturn the results of the Georgia, or I'm sorry, it was just to find 11,780 votes. That's all we need.
That's all we need.
That's all we need.
We just need 11,000 votes.
844-967-2789. You can call or you can text. 715 says this helps him. He will continue to divert donations to help him beat the charges. I can't remember a billionaire ever getting so much free money from Stevens Point.
Oh, that's a really good point.
Well, they fundraise off this stuff all the time.
Well, that's what I mean. I feel like he's going to sell a shirt of his mugshot for sure. I mean, that was rumors. I don't know if it's been confirmed, but rumors are that he wanted a perp walk.
Oh, because he can
leverage
martyr
it.
himself. Yes.
Yeah, and so he wanted to be taken away in cuffs on camera so that can be he can martyr himself. And so, I mean, again, that's the rumor.
I can see the oil paintings now with a halo over his head as he's being perp walked away.
And it's interesting because what was the stat that the earlier texter said that there's like 30% of the Republican Party that's just all in, no matter what.
Exactly.
And it is interesting though, because the early polling and granted, it's very early. I feel like this early in the 2016 Republican primary hopefuls, of which there was a lot, like Scott Walker was the head at that point, or at some, it was like things changed. Jeb Bush, right? Like there was other guys who were
please clap
for like way further ahead, or like at least what the pundits were saying is who was most likely. And that is obviously not how it turned out. So it's a long time. But as of right now, he's still leading, even with all of the DeSantis fanboys out there and fangirls.
Yeah.
Which at the end of the hour, we're going to talk about. We're going to have some fun with, don't go up against Bob Iger. I think that is the lesson that DeSantis might have just, I don't know if he learned it, but to two massive egos going head to head as far as Ron DeSantis v. Disney. At least in this round, Disney has won
So far.
and
So far.
in this round.
Yeah.
It's not over.
No, it's not.
But it is. This round is a doozy. So we're going to talk about that in the 1 o'clock hour. But we're still taking your calls. How do you feel about the Trump indictment? Angry, skeptical, happy? 844-967-2789. And do you think this? And I think maybe we should separate. Does this help him in the primary versus does this help him in the general? Because I think, going into, and it'll be interesting to see how this, even for Wisconsin, as all eyes are on us going into next week, how the idea of MAGA does in swing states so far doesn't have a great track record. And so again, like doing well in a primary and having a fervent Republican base is very different than being able to win statewide.
Exactly.
For presidential, like across the entire country. And so would love to hear from you. 844-967-2789. Does this help him or hurt him? And in the primary versus the general. But one piece of information that I feel like will probably not get enough attention today because everything everywhere is Trump.
Yeah.
But this is not something that just is happening in Texas, despite coming out of Texas. This is a nationwide decision for now. But a federal judge rules insurance does not have to cover PrEP drugs, mammograms, and much more. And this is not just in Texas. This is for the nation. So yesterday, a federal judge in Texas ruled that Obamacare's requirement that health insurance cover preventative health care at no cost is unconstitutional and struck it down nationwide. Yeah. So what does this mean? The ruling affects PrEP for HIV, cancer screenings.
No longer free.
Well, it's unconstitutional to force insurance companies to insurance to have to cover this.
Okay.
So it's up to the insurance company now whether or not they would like to cover this. So the ruling affects PrEP for HIV, cancer screenings, mammograms, and some prenatal care.
Oh, but keep having those babies.
But keep
girl.
having the babies.
Go have babies. We need babies.
Which includes screenings for gestational diabetes and preeclampsia. So it does not affect the birth control coverage mandate, as the judge dismissed that part of the lawsuit. And it also does not affect the HPV vaccine coverage, of which plaintiffs also objected in their original claim. And so some insurance companies will continue to cover these services cost-free, since it makes financial sense to do so, because, preventative care usually cheaper than taking care of you once you're sick.
Yeah.
But others may decide to go back and start charging deductibles or copays. And so, inevitably, these changes could lead people to not get adequate health care and get sick and die. But, because preeclampsia, if you are not familiar, can be imminently life-threatening for pregnant people who are now subject to, obviously, abortion bans in almost 20 states, including Wisconsin. But preeclampsia is basically when you start to have high blood pressure in the later mid to late months of your pregnancy. If you don't deliver, the woman dies. Like it's that straightforward. And so how did we get here, Jane?
I don't know. I was going to say judge shopping.
Yeah. So 2 Texas companies sued the Department of Health and Human Services in 2020, claiming that they wanted to provide health insurance to employees that didn't cover PrEP drugs because they objected to it on religious grounds, of course. So the judge summarized this, shall we say, bigoted argument like so. Quote, each claims that the preventative care mandates requiring compulsory coverage for those services violates their religious beliefs by making them complicit in facilitating homosexual behavior, drug use, and sexual activity outside of marriage between one man and one woman as a condition of purchasing health insurance. End quote. So, of course, not to state the obvious, as far as that just being a very bigoted, prejudicial idea, but it also ignores the fact that even monogamous heterosexual people who don't use drugs can do get HIV and also get pregnant and also so it's this is just ignoring a huge amount of people that fall outside of that the hedonists sinners, but also still need that care, let alone that it is wrong to just not want to give health care to certain groups of people.
But see, there you go again, trying to bring logic into these things. I mean, it goes back to the gravity argument. We all have to agree that gravity exists, and then we go from there.
So what's unfortunate about this is basically this is going to likely be appealed, but the road does not look that much very hopeful post appeal, because since it's filed in Texas, an appeal to any of this verdict would land in the lap of the Fifth Circuit Court of Appeals, which is the same venue that upheld the Texas abortion ban last September. And the next step after that would be the 6-3 conservative supermajority Supreme Court, which hasn't considered an Obama challenge since Justice Amy Coney Barrett joined. So this is the timeline we live in. But I feel like this is a really big deal that affects that. I mean, and granted, it will come down to now individual insurance on what they want to cover and what they don't. So, check your insurance. But for now, this judge single-handedly can decide for the nation that those preventive healthcare is to require it is unconstitutional. And then the other headline that caught my eye that feels like, oh, this should probably get more attention, especially after how much attention Brittany Griner got for the 10 months she was in Russia, detained. And, obviously that was controversial on its own, but she was detained for seemingly what's, felt trivial. Granted, it's illegal, but she basically had hash oil, right? Like hash oil vape pens.
Right.
And was detained for 10 months. Well, now Russia has arrested an American journalist for alleged espionage, which seems a little more serious. Seems like a much more serious charge for the first time since the Cold War. And I would just like to say, I am not that brave. Post Brittany Griner and all of that stuff, you could not pay me to go to Russia at all, let alone willingly work there.
Right.
So basically the Wall Street Journal journalist, I'm going to butcher his last name. It's Evan Gershkovich, has been detained in Russia on espionage charges. And he is a U.S. citizen. And he was arrested and accused of spying on behalf of the U.S. government. And this is, like I said, the first time a U.S. journalist has been detained for spying since the Cold War. He's 31. And he works for the Wall Street Journal's Moscow office. And he's accused of gathering state secret information regarding activities at the Russian defense plant. So he's pleaded not guilty as of yesterday, but he faces up to 20 years in prison if he's found guilty.
Well, Vlad is losing the war.
Well, and I just that's what I mean. I obviously know the world needs brave people and brave journalists who are willing to continue to do their job in the face of great danger in adversarial countries, but you could not pay me to go work in Russia, especially to be poking around and have this end up being, especially after seeing something as silly and trivial and how serious they were, how seriously they were taking Brittany Griner in order to make her a political prisoner and basically get, what was the arms dealer's nickname that we traded her for?
Oh, I don't remember.
The like the war demon of death or something ridiculous. And so I don't, what upper hand does this? I mean, if that was the case, but now this feels very serious.
Without a doubt.
And terrifying.
Yes, absolutely. And I am really concerned for him because let's not forget the Russians don't shy away from poisoning people, throwing people out of windows, having questionable accidents happen to people they don't like. This is a very, very scary situation.
Yeah. And so, again, both of those stories I feel like are not going to give as much coverage as they deserve as far as having, especially the first one with healthcare, how many more people this affects versus how much attention, not that it's not important, but how much attention the Trump story is going to get. And so certainly wanted to give both of those some attention today.
Definitely.
But again, if you have feelings and still want to get it out as far as your feelings about the Trump indictment, 844-967-2789. Does it hurt him? Does it help him? So we will take your calls and your texts when we come back and also play a headline quiz. Let's see how well we paid attention this week. This is As Goes Wisconsin.
Here is the news. Somebody has broken out a satellite tube. Here is the news. Look very carefully, it may be you.
Energy call today as you need to meet John Bishop.
Missed your favorite show live on air? It's easy to find what you enjoy wherever you listen to podcasts, including Spotify, Apple, and Google Podcasts. And we're always streaming on TuneIn and the Civic Media app.
Max Inc. Radio with Dennis Graham from Rockonson.
Appreciate all the support of Mad Radio 92.7. And by the way, a tip of the hat to Civic Media. That was a great article in the Cap Times by Paul Fanlin. You guys got a great model that you're growing around the state, local interest with radio stations throughout these different markets. And a tip of the hat, and you're focusing on local music and nobody's doing it. So great job.
Listen to Max Inc. Radio Saturday night, 6 to midnight on the Civic Media Radio Network.
Hey there, fellow working class heroes. I'm Rick Smith, host of The Rick Smith Show, and we are now on the air in Waukesha, live weeknights 8 to 10 p.m. right here on WAUK 540 AM, 101 FM, The Shaw. Turn on, tune in, and help us rebuild the American dream. Check out our website at thericksmithshow.com. The Rick Smith Show, where working people come to talk. Weeknights 8 to 10 p.m. right here on WAUK 540 AM, 101 FM, The Shaw.
It's 4 a.m. and you're sucking baby snot through a tube because she's congested. If you love her that much, love her enough to make sure she's buckled in the right car seat. Find out more at nhtsa.gov/the right seat. Brought to you by the National Highway Traffic Safety Administration and the Ad Council.
Here's your updated forecast on the Shaw. Chance for isolated storms this afternoon, otherwise overcast skies. Daytime highs approaching 63, south winds 10 to 15 miles an hour. Isolated thunderstorms likely tonight. Lows level off around 34. Overcast. Overcast skies tomorrow. Mixed precipitation likely 39. A dusting of snow tomorrow. For Civic Media, I'm meteorologist Eric Height. Currently, it's 54 degrees.
A progressive voice from Manitowoc to Janesville. WAUK 540 AM. Always streaming at WAUKradio.com.
Welcome back to As Goes Wisconsin. Has there been any more updates? Have you watched the news at all as far as since we started to see if anything on
I have not.
Trump, but just instead of just a ton of think pieces of people giving their 2 cents?
Lots of think pieces. And of course, his lawyer saying, his lawyer actually said he's not going to be handcuffed.
He's not.
Yeah.
Which is good. I do not think he should be. I feel like the less of a spectacle this can all be,
the better.
The better for everyone. I think it's better for just continue to treat it as following the law and not a circus. And
But if we were to follow the law and if it were anyone else, wouldn't they get handcuffed?
I feel like I don't know. I feel like in a lot of, I mean, I have no numbers to back this off, but as far as like people turning themselves in, especially when it comes to like white collar crime and other things, like I don't think that there's a lot of times that they don't necessarily go get him and put him in handcuffs and like make sure his head doesn't hit the police car as they put him in. Like I usually think that some of these things are a little bit more buttoned up than
When you turn yourself in.
Yeah, I think if you're like on the lam, maybe not, but if he's willing to cooperate, I don't think it's the law that they have to handcuff him.
Associated Press is reporting the former president will officially be arraigned at a Manhattan court Tuesday, 2:15 Eastern.
All right.
2:15 Eastern next Tuesday, which, by the way, is election day.
Which is election day. That is maybe I'll have to ask Bill and Scott how much that affects us on Tuesday, because when we come back after the top of the hour news at 12:06, Bill McCoshen, Republican strategist, and Scott Ross, Democratic analyst, two longtime veterans of Wisconsin politics, are going to be here for the half hour to talk about, I'm sure we'll talk a little bit about Trump, but mostly about where we're at in their view 4 days out from our election on Tuesday. So I'm really looking forward to that conversation. And then we are also going to be talking to Alan Borsuk, who is back, who is a longtime education reporter and now a fellow at Marquette University. And he just had a piece published today in Milwaukee Journal Sentinel talking about the reading wars in Wisconsin. And I feel like that's a dramatic way to put it, but I will ask him why he uses those words, because our literacy rates, not great.
Yeah, it's really frightening.
Not great in Wisconsin. And so there is a fight over how to turn the ship around. And, you know, when CJ Safer was here a couple of weeks ago, I think he alluded to this, and that there's basically a ideological debate happening between teaching reading through phonics versus memorization. And I have it's been a long time, so it's hard for me to go back and understand, like, how did I learn how to read? Like, what was the methodology when I was growing up to learn how to read? Was it sounding things out, or was it just memorizing the words?
I just think reading to children before they can read is the best setup.
But is that assuming that the reason why our literacy rates are going down is because people aren't doing that? I don't know. I mean, these are all things we're going to have to ask Alan of, like, why is this? What are people pointing to as why this has become? Because it's not just the places where you would assume that it is, which is MPS, urban districts. It's like New Berlin.
Really?
Yeah. It's not as I don't think the rates are as poor, but as far as declining and not having a fair amount of not adequate literacy rates, even in high income areas with arguably more funded school districts, it's still a problem. And so that'll be a really interesting conversation. But for now, let's see if we can finish this news quiz.
Sounds good.
For the week. All right. Elon Musk and 1,000 other tech leaders signed a letter pushing for a 6-month pause in the development of, do you know off the top of your head?
I don't.
All right. A, carbon sequestration. B, giant AI experiments. C, self-driving cars. D, the metaverse.
I'm going with self-driving cars.
All right. I'm going to go with B, AI experiments. Number 2, U.S. regulators filed a complaint against which crypto exchange for allegedly violating compliance rules? Well, I don't know if I know this one. A, Coinbase. B, KuCoin. C, Binance. D, Kraken. Those are stupid names.
And I'm going to pick according to the name because I have no idea about any of this. I will go with Kraken.
Kraken? All right. Well, I'll go with you on that one. Number 3, which MLB team shattered payroll records with a projected $370 million this season? The New York Yankees, LA Dodgers, San Diego Padres, or the New York Mets?
I'll go with Yankees.
All right. I think I'm going to go with Mets. Number 4, which athletic brand withdrew its objection to a Black Lives Matter trademark application for a design resembling its corporate logo? Lululemon, Adidas, Nike, Under Armour.
Under Armour.
All right.
I'm not doing well today.
It's fine. We're running out of time, so I gotta go fast. All right. Number 5, Australian food company Vow created a meatball from the DNA of which extinct mammal? The woolly mammoth, Tasmanian tiger, Irish deer, or saber-toothed tiger?
Nothing like a woolly mammoth meatball.
Sounds so gross.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, we only got 3 out of 5 correct.
Yeah, this was not our best day.
Not our best day. So
we had a lot going on.
We did. So the letter from Elon Musk plus 1,000 other people asked for a pause in giant AI experiments.
Okay, you're
which
right.
I think is a good thing because it's moving pretty fast. The CFTC sued Binance.
Oh, Binance.
That one, of course.
Just
of course.
Jumped out at me, yes.
And then I actually just read about this. The New York Mets are spending $370 million on payroll. I guess their owner is the show Billions?
Yes.
The guy in that, like the hedge fund manager in that is who the guy who owns the Mets. That character is loosely based off of him. So he's got a lot of money.
Okay.
And then Adidas withdrew its objections to a BLM trademark application, and Vow did create a meatball with woolly mammoth DNA. Ugh. All right. Well, we have the news coming up, and when we come back, Bill McCoshen and Scott Ross will be here to give us how both sides of the aisle is feeling with 4 days left until the election. This is As Goes Wisconsin.
Tuesday's great and Wednesday too. Thursday, I don't care about you. It's Friday, I'm in love. Monday, you can fall apart. Tuesday, Wednesday, break my heart. Thursday doesn't even start. It's Friday, I'm in love.
You are listening to your local Civic Media radio station on air. Thank you. Did you know we are always streaming on TuneIn and the Civic Media app too? And if you miss a show or game, find it wherever you get your podcasts or on our website, civicmedia.us.
Monday morning at 8, don't miss Under the Helmet with the Gravedigger, featuring legendary Gilbert Brown and Earl Ingram. Football, life, and fun.
Earl, you've been driving a Yugo. They just gave you a brand new Ferrari with turbo boost. So enjoy it, brother.
Under the Helmet with the Gravedigger, Gilbert Brown and Earl Ingram. Monday morning at 8 on the Shaw, 540 AM and 101.1 FM WAUK.
You've got questions about navigating the healthcare system? Kristen Lyerly helps us find answers and discusses other issues at the intersection of healthcare and politics. Hometown Health, Thursday mornings at 7:30 on Up North.
You are listening to WAUK 540 AM Jackson, W266 DR Waukesha, always streaming on the Civic Media app.
This is CBS News on the Hour, presented by Indeed.com.
I'm Steve Kathan. Former President Trump is poised to surrender to face the charges in a New York indictment against him on Tuesday. For now, those charges remain sealed.
Inside the Trump Organization, reimbursements for Michael Cohen's hush payment to Stormy Daniels were cataloged as legal expenses. It's why Trump's defense team expects prosecutors will charge their client with falsifying business records. In order for it to be a felony, the fraud must involve another crime. Observers expect that second crime to be a federal campaign finance violation. But Trump attorney Joe Tacopina tells CBS Mornings.
It's a very troubling case because there's no crime here. The United States Attorney's Office, who has jurisdiction over federal election campaigns, turned this down.
Stephen Portnoy, CBS News, Washington.
The Manhattan DA wrote to House Republicans today accusing them of unlawful political interference in their efforts to get information on the case. A weather system stretching through the nation's midsection could create some dangerous conditions before the end of the day. CBS News meteorologist David Parkinson.
From Iowa to Mississippi, it's a more than 500-mile stretch of the nation's midsection from top to bottom that could be seeing the potential for some devastating tornadoes. The risk is there for EF2 or stronger tornadoes.
President Biden will get a first-hand look at tornado damage in western Mississippi. White House Press Secretary Karine Jean-Pierre says there will be financial help.
Today, the president will announce that the federal government will cover 100% of the cost of the state's emergency measures for the next 30 days.
Former Paralympic athlete Oscar Pistorius was denied parole today in South Africa. He was convicted in 2013 of killing his girlfriend. CBS's Deborah Patta says the court heard from the victim's mother.
Speaking before the parole board today, Reva Steenkamp's mother, June, saying that she does not believe Oscar Pistorius' story. She said that Oscar Pistorius refuses to admit that he killed her daughter in anger, and that until he does that, he cannot be deemed to have demonstrated any remorse.
Well, here at home, it's a busy day for spring break travel.
The airport packed. It's the busiest travel day of the spring break season. These little ones are excited to go see snow.
I think we have a week for spring break.
I'm going to make a snow angel.
Airport officials suggest you get to the airport inside at least 2 to 2.5 hours before your scheduled flight time.
Hello, sir.
Hey, how are you?
I'm good. I've not heard anything from Bill. Have you?
No. I'll text him. Bill, get on the goddamn call.
I'd emailed both of you this morning. I didn't see anything from him, and he didn't respond to the calendar invite. So I was like, well, hopefully he's coming. Otherwise, you and I could just BS about everything.
Sure thing.
So we will roll with it. But yeah, I hadn't heard anything from him. So, but nothing bounced. So I'm pretty sure you gave me the right email address.
What's that?
I said the email didn't
bounce.
bounce.
I assume, yeah. I just texted him.
All right, great. I think in the email I sent, if he needs to call instead of join the StreamYard, he has the number as well.
Yeah. How's things going?
Good. Happy it's Friday.
Yeah, me too.
Weeks are long. You look tan.
Yeah, well, I was in Spain for 2 months, nine and a half weeks, 9.5 weeks, which, is a 50 something. Whenever I hear 9.5 weeks, I think of the Kim Basinger, Mickey Rourke, romantic thriller. But anyhow, I'm not going to get into the details about that particular stupid movie, but they ate food in front of a open refrigerator door. Bill just says he's getting on.
All right, great. Just in time.
Yeah.
I figure we can start just with quick takes on the Trump thing and then move into the election.
Yeah.
Future employees. If you're interested or are part of an organization who wants to know more, go to our website, civicmedia.us, and click on the Careers tab.
The Shaw, 101 FM, WAUK 540.
Okay, we got about a minute.
Okay.
Wisconsin's
Well,
home for
once he joins, he joins.
Talk Radio.
On Tuesday, April 4th, we have a chance to elect people who will do the right thing for Wisconsin and for Waukesha. We need experienced leaders we can trust. Vote for Janet Protasewicz for Supreme Court, Fred Stram for Waukesha County Circuit Court, and Diane Voigt for Waukesha School Board. Janet, Fred, Diane, because we can trust them. Vote on April 4th. Your vote and your voice matter. Paid for by Blue Sky Waukesha.
Do you love getting rewards when you shop? Then shop Knucklehead CBD and vapes with the Knuckleheads Club. Every $10 spent gets you closer to 25% off. No matter what you buy, make sure you buy Knuckleheads. Stop in Saturday and Sunday and get 15% off Wellness and Wellness Plus, including Delta 8, THCP, CBD, and more, while getting points towards your next purchase.
Visit Knuckleheads Milwaukee at 2949 North Oakland Avenue or online at knuckleheads.shop.
Knucklehead CBD and Vapes, your one-stop smoke shop.
A progressive voice for rural Wisconsin. WAUK 540 AM. Always streaming at WAUK.
United States is for Fig Newton. It was named after Newton, Massachusetts.
Oh.
I haven't had a Fig Newton in a really long time.
It's because they're bad cookies.
Man, you're really downing on a lot of things that I like this morning. Jeez, don't yuck my yum.
Don't what?
Don't yuck my yum.
Got it.
Moving Wisconsin forward, one joke at a time. This is Kristen Bry with As Goes Wisconsin.
Yada, yada, yada.
Hello, Wisconsin. Welcome to the noon hour of our Friday show of As Goes Wisconsin. I am Kristen Bry. She is Jane Madnair. And our guest is Mr. Scott Ross, longtime political veteran of Wisconsin politics and Democratic analyst. And we were waiting for Bill McCoshen, Republican strategist, to join us as well. But Scott, so happy to have you on this is your first time. We've been connected for the last couple of years since I started As Goes Wisconsin, but first time on the show. Happy to have you.
Thank you. It's great to be here. Good to meet you, Jane. And hopefully everybody will be gentle to me. I don't know. Bill must be picking up one of those big sacks of Republican cash that he has at his disposal. So we'll have to wait and see.
We'll have to wait. But I guess while we wait for Bill, I would love to hear we'd spend a lot of the first hour talking about the biggest story of the day, which is the former president being indicted. And we were asking whether this hurts or helps him. And I guess it also, to be a little bit more pointed, does it hurt or help him in the general election versus the primary election? How are you feeling this morning?
Well, I mean, there's lots of, there are a lot of non-lawyers like myself and a lot of non-political analysts who are out there making their thoughts about this known. I would say this, like, it's a pretty understandable crime. He paid off a porn star to, keep their affair under wraps, and he had somebody launder that money to do it. It's pretty easily understood. So, like, there are people out there, obviously, who, will look past someone's character flaws when they're making their choice of the election, at the ballot box. But I think this is so easy. I don't think Trump isn't going to gain voters out of this. I was arguing with a friend of mine, who's on the other side about this very subject. Like, Trump lost by 3 million votes in 2016. He lost by 8 million in 2020. Like, he's tapped out. He's not going to suddenly have a bunch of people who were like, I'm rejecting this guy, who didn't vote for him before, who are suddenly going to say, well, you know what, the fact that he got indicted for, laundering money to pay off a porn star and avoid the campaign finance laws, that's going to be the thing that really makes me want to go out and vote for him this time. That's why I don't think it's going to make a difference in 2024. I don't think it's really going to change anything. We'll have to see what happens. I mean, I have been in Democratic politics for 30 years. And so I know that, like, if you set the bar low enough bound to succeed, and things can always get worse. So who knows what will happen with this indictment, because he's been able to walk through this crooked guy has been able to walk through the raindrops for 50 years practically. So.
And I'm wondering, Scott, and now Vice News is reporting this morning, they're watching all of these far-right neo-Nazi accounts. And, of course, they're talking about violence and putting a bounty on Alvin Bragg's head and this unjustified prosecution is state terrorism, respond to terrorism with terrorism. One says, hopefully, it will be remembered as a day of slaughter.
Jesus.
Yeah, that's ugly. That's ugly stuff. But again, this is where that side has gone because, again, we have members of Congress, even from Wisconsin, who participated in the January 6th terrorist insurrection to try and undo the results of a democratically decided, open and fair and clean election. So the fact that they're going down this path towards violence, I don't think is surprising at all. Whether or not they go through on that with violence in the streets, I think we just have to be prepared, and hopefully, law enforcement will do its job. And when one of these clowns gets out of line and law enforcement has to put them in place, hopefully they'll do what they always encourage. Black people who are unarmed black people who are killed, and they'll just comply.
Just comply.
So yeah, just comply. So.
Well, I guess the most pressing thing, I guess, in Wisconsin though, is if he being Donald Trump does turn himself in on Tuesday, that also happens to be an election day for us, a very big election. And so do you see this in a more imminent future affecting the outcome of Tuesday's election? Do you think this motivates people? Because obviously in 2020, Trump did endorse Dan Kelly. And so there is a connection there. And there is a connection of, I would say, MAGA Wisconsinites supporting Dan Kelly. And so is this motivating by proxy for Tuesday?
Well, let me answer your question by noting this. So back in 2019, when the Supreme Court race was going on between Hagedorn and Lisa Neubauer, on the 24th of March was when Bill Barr put that report out saying, the Mueller report is garbage. And after that happened, which was on the 24th, again, that was like maybe 9 days before the election, the spike in terms of coverage, the people going to Fox News increased. There was a ton of advertising there for the Supreme Court race. And as we know, by 7,000 votes, Hagedorn won. So I'm guessing that this will increase some attention that Fox News is getting, and certainly there's advertising on there. I don't necessarily know that they have enough time to make it change, in the way that it did then, because again, there was a little bit more time before the election for people to get riled up and stuff. So I don't know that it's going to make a difference. I think that the Democrats and progressives have done everything that they can at this point, and I know that you just see what's happened in the last 15 years with Supreme Court races. Gableman won by 10,000 votes in 2008. Kloppenberg lost to Prosser in 2001 by 5,000 votes or 7,000 votes. And then by 5,000 to 7,000 votes, Hagedorn won. So Democrats know that. The operation with the Democratic Party in terms of a statewide field program is obviously well on its way to achieving its goals. So I feel very, very good about that. In a tight race, having a statewide field program is invaluable. I'm a comms guy, I'm not a field guy, but I recognize the importance of field. And that's something that we didn't have in 2019 when that race was so close and Hagedorn eventually won. I think you saw with the Karofsky race, a fully empowered field program, that ostensibly run by the Democratic Party, turns Democratic voters out, and they have a reason to go out. And I don't see the enthusiasm on the Republican side. Granted, I'm in the People's Republic of Madison, but I don't see the enthusiasm even online for Dan Kelly. They may dislike DeSantis, but they don't like, Dan Kelly, they don't like necessarily losers, and that guy lost already.
And lost by a lot. We're talking to Scott Ross, who's a longtime Democratic analyst in Wisconsin politics. And I think that was because I also live in an echo chamber. I realize, as much as I try to get out, but in my world of posting things online and people who seem very fired up to vote for Janet, I see far less people very excited to vote for Dan Kelly. And I was trying to, because I'm still so new relatively back to Wisconsin politics, right? So it's I moved back literally a month before the Karofsky Dan Kelly election during the pandemic in April of 2020, and was not here the year prior when Hagedorn won in 2019. And it's interesting because, like you just said, as far as what are the similarities or differences you can see from how this year's 2023 race has been versus 2019, where it was 6,000 vote difference, and then 2020, that was 100,000 vote difference.
Sure. I mean, there's totally different universes. And most notably, the reason there were different universes was because of the Dobbs decision. and the fact that like abortion is now is once again a state issue, and this will decide whether or not we can undo the criminal abortion ban from 1849. I mean, that is just, light and day. And we've seen, in 2019, again, in 2019, it was right after we swept all statewide elections here in the state of Wisconsin. And sometimes, you get a little, sit on your laurels. In 2020, that was not the case. And now in 2023, the opportunity is there to take the court back, something Democrats haven't done for 15 years. And again, like we worked on Supreme Court judicial issue advocacy for like 12 years. And the fact that the candidates are now, that the Democratic Party is involved fully, when in the past, like they were pushed out, while the Republican candidates for all those years, the number one donor to the Republican candidate was always the Republican Party of Wisconsin. That is just night and day. They're now fighting on fair turf. And right now it looks very good for protozoates, but you have to, election day hasn't happened yet. And so you have to keep doing everything you can. This obviously could be a squeaker that goes to rig out what, I don't even want to use the R word, but like all these things could happen. It is an unprecedented time, but what we have seen since the Dobbs decision happened is that fair elections, Democrats are winning them, not just in Wisconsin, but all over the country.
And I have no basis for this, Scott, but I am hopeful that people are just tired of their lawmakers not responding to what the people of Wisconsin want and want to get rid of the gerrymander because nothing gets done. And we've been watching it for a decade now, and I would just like to think that the arrogance of some might be finally coming back to bite them.
Yeah, I mean, that's one of the things that and why I think what you're all doing is so important, is that there hasn't been that machine that can help get a contrast message out, to places outside of Madison and Milwaukee because of the lack of the elected officials out, in the state legislature in particular. So every newspaper article that's out in a place like, I don't know, Wisconsin Rapids or Wausau is just what the Republicans have to say, because there aren't any Democrats out there, and they're elected Democrats, and they aren't out there pushing to get into these stories. Communications and earned media is a 24-hour a day, 7-day a week job. You can't just, try and pay for media when it comes to the end. So the fact that there's more voices and we're starting to see, progressives recognize the importance of the communication vehicles that Republicans have had in place for decades, I think is great for the state of Wisconsin. It's ultimately going to be great for your pocketbooks, and it's ultimately going to be great for democracy.
Well, that's what we hope. All right. Well, we're going to still see if we can try to get Bill for the last 8 minutes in the next segment. But either way, Mr. Scott Ross will still be here, Democratic analyst. I have some questions. I have some thoughts on the political ads, and if this is just the direction that our judicial campaigns are going to be forevermore, and whether or not that's a good thing. And so I'd love to hear your opinion on that. But stick with us. This is As Goes Wisconsin.
Direct from the Dairy State, it's Extra Sharp Weekends, a 3-hour block of Wisconsin-produced radio, Saturdays and Sundays from 11 a.m. till 2 p.m., featuring Raised in Wisco with Joe Clayfish and Danielle Fairman, The Cripescast with Charlie Behrens, and Under the Helmet with the Gravedigger, Gilbert Brown. Enjoy it by the slice or enjoy the whole darn block. Extra Sharp Weekends is radio so fresh, it squeaks. Listen in on the Civic Media Station or on the app.
The Devil's Advocates radio show, the last segment of the day. If you got something to say, hit us up right now for your crudités at 844-967-2789.
I thought they were Crudy Takes.
Crudy's Takes. See, man, it all comes back around to Sports Talk Live.
Something like that.
My wife wants some vegetables for crudité.
You know what I mean?
Listen Monday through Friday from 4 to 6 p.m. for the Devil's Advocates radio show.
grew up hearing that women are bad with money, but I pay bills and take care of my family, so I'm pretty good with money. And now I'm taking control of my financial future by saving for retirement. Jumpstart your retirement savings at WeSaySaveIt.org. Brought to you by AARP and the Ad Council.
It's easy to listen to your favorite local radio station anytime. Download the Civic Media app from the Apple or Google Play Store, then listen live or whenever you want from anywhere for free.
Here's your updated forecast on the Shaw. Chance for isolated storms this afternoon, otherwise overcast skies. Daytime highs approaching 63, south winds 10 to 15 miles an hour. Isolated thunderstorms likely tonight. Lows level off around 34. Overcast. Overcast skies tomorrow. Mixed precipitation likely 39. A dusting of snow tomorrow. For Civic Media, I'm meteorologist Eric Height. Currently, it's 55 degrees.
The Shaw 101 FM, Franklin's choice for news talk radio. Streaming 24/7 at WAUKradio.com.
Welcome back to As Goes Wisconsin. I am Kristen Bry. She is Jane Madnair, and we have Bill McCoshen on the phone. So we're excited to have you join the conversation, sir. But we're also here with Scott Ross. One's a Democrat, one's a Republican. Both have been in the game for a very long time. So, Bill, since you've just joined, thank you for joining. And we got to hear from Scott in the previous segment. But how are you feeling about our Supreme Court election 4 days away from Tuesday?
The good, the bad, the ugly. Let's start with the ugly. The amount of spending is staggering. We have already exceeded the national record for spending on a state Supreme Court race. It was 15 million. We're already north of 45 million. And my guess is we'll get north of 50 million before it's all said and done.
Wow.
That's staggering. And you got to ask yourself, why are people investing that kind of money in a state Supreme Court race? So I would start with that being the ugly. The good from a Kelly standpoint is his statewide organization seems to be hitting on all cylinders. He's clearly losing the money battle between he and Janet Protasiewicz. But the base is fired up, and typically spring elections tend to be base versus base. So I think Republicans understand what's at stake on Tuesday, and the question is really going to boil down to turnout. Who's got the better mechanism and machine to get their voters to the poll on Tuesday?
Well, and it's funny because, you're probably outnumbered right now as far as Jane, Scott, and I, but as far as what is at stake from a Republican's point of view, because I think we hear a lot from the left on what we think is at stake, but I guess since we talk less to conservatives, like what do you think is firing people up on the right?
That's a great question. And on our side, I think it's really simple. Our founders created three co-equal branches of government: the executive, the legislative, and the judicial. The role of the judiciary is to interpret the law, not to make the law. Dan Kelly has a 4-year proven record on the Wisconsin Supreme Court where he interprets the law. Janet Protasiewicz has said publicly that she will put her thumb on the scale on certain issues, such as abortion and redistricting. She's sort of gone back and forth on whether or not Act 10 might be one of those issues, but this is the first time I can remember, Kristen and Jane and Scott, where we have a candidate openly campaigning on the positions they will take as a sitting judge. So for conservatives, this is pretty simple. Do you want a Supreme Court that will interpret the law? Then Dan Kelly's your guy. If you're looking for a super legislature that will undo things that you view as bad that Republicans have done over the last decade or more, then Janet Protasiewicz is probably your pick.
Scott, do you have a reaction to that?
Yeah, I would say this. The first point that Bill made, and I think that Bill has definitely has some good insights into what's going on the Republican side for sure. But I'll say this: here's the reason the big money's coming in from out of state. The big money's coming in from out of state because if Dan Kelly is on the Supreme Court, he will vote to overturn the election of 2024. Whether he will be a reliable vote for that. So it's very, very important. I mean, Hagedorn held strong for the most part last time, but there are cracks in that armor. The fact that we don't have drop boxes anymore for dropping up. You can put your ballot in an locked mailbox, but you can't put it in a locked drop box to drop your thing off. I mean, I think that's the big why people care about this, because democracy is on the ballot, abortion is on the ballot, and I think that bodes well for the Democrats in this particular race.
I'm curious if both of you would agree with me that Citizens United was a terrible decision and opened the floodgates for all of this money.
Jane, if I can, I'll pop in because I only want to say one thing. I was going to let Bill trash Citizens United. We have this money in the race because Robin Voss, Scott Walker, and Scott Fitzgerald changed the laws in 2015 to allow unlimited spending, allow unlimited contributions and transfers from parties to candidates. That's why this has nothing to do with Citizens United. But go ahead, Bill, because I know you don't like Citizens, or you do like it. So please.
Well, let me say this. I don't think that the third party money will be decisive here. And here's why. It's roughly equal. Kelly's slightly behind on the third party money, but it's far more equal than what the candidates themselves have raised. And why that's important for your listeners is candidates themselves can buy ads cheaper than third parties can. Number one. Number two, a candidate commercial, the candidate controls the message. They cannot coordinate with a third party on what their messaging will be. So every dollar in a candidate's campaign, frankly, is worth $2.50 or $3 in a third party. And that's where Protasewicz has a fairly significant advantage, maybe 8 or 9 to 1. She's raised roughly $14 million. Kelly's raised roughly $2.5 million in their candidate committee. And I was with someone earlier today that thinks Janet will get north of 18 before this is all said and done. That's where her real advantage comes, is on the money that has been raised within the campaign. Now, the other thing your listeners may not understand is how it gets there. This is actually a Republican law that was passed in 2015, signed by Governor Walker, that allowed unlimited contributions to state parties. Those monies can then be transferred directly to a candidate's campaign. Let me give you the most probably prominent example that your listeners would understand. The Democratic governor of Illinois, J.B. Pritzker, just gave the Democratic Party of Wisconsin $1 million. That money then got transferred directly to Janet Protasewicz's campaign. So why the heck would the governor of Illinois care about this race? Those are things that I think, Scott and I may disagree from time to time, but there are some realities in politics. And right now, Democrats have a significant advantage as it relates to that loophole that was passed in 2015.
All right. Well, we only have a minute left. I wish I had you guys for a lot longer because this is super interesting. But I want to end on this. In the ugliness of that we've seen in this race, and we're going to do it again in 2 years in 2025. Not that we're going to change anything, but as two guys who this has been your career, is it a good thing or a bad thing that we elect our Supreme Court judges, our justices, or would you rather we appoint them? We got 30 seconds. Scott, we'll start with you.
I am in favor of people having direct access to voting for all three branches of government.
And Bill?
I'm leaning towards appointment. I think this is disgusting, the amount of money. We've crossed the Rubicon where candidates are running commercials calling the other person corrupt.
Yes.
That word. We've
All
never
right.
seen that before.
Thank you so much, guys. Sorry we had to cut you short. We have another guest coming in soon, but Scott Ross, Bill McCoshen, thank you so much. We'll definitely have you back, maybe after the election.
Been great.
Bringing some sanity to the airwaves. The Shaw 101 FM, WAUK 540 AM.
CBS News special report. Donald Trump's attorney alleges the historic indictment against the former president and current GOP candidate is all about politics.
This is a case that would not have been brought against another individual in this country if his name wasn't Donald Trump.
Joe Tacopina expects no handcuffs when Trump appears in court Tuesday. CBS's Robert Costa.
The indictment against Trump is sealed and will likely be disclosed at his arraignment, but it is tied to a so-called hush money payment made to former adult film star Stormy Daniels just weeks before the 2016 election to hide an alleged affair with Trump. Trump has denied the affair and any wrongdoing.
CBS's Bradley Blackburn in New York.
With security a big concern, the NYPD notified all officers, including plainclothes police, to be in full uniform today and ready for deployment.
Georgia Congresswoman Marjorie Taylor Greene and others say on social media they plan to be in New York next week to protest. CBS News Special Report. I'm Steve Kathan.
The Shaw 101 FM, your fix for progressive talk. From Muskego to Milwaukee, always streaming at WAUKradio.com.
For Civic Media News, I'm Terry Bell. There's a bipartisan bill to let pregnant low-income women in Wisconsin keep their Medicaid coverage for about a year. About half of all state lawmakers are co-sponsoring.
Hey, Alan.
And good afternoon.
How you doing, sir?
I'm okay. A little hectic this time of year, but I'm staying above water.
That's good. Is it hectic because of the election or other stuff?
No, election doesn't mean much to me as far as
Okay.
work, but we got a magazine we're finishing up at the law school. For me, I got Passover starting next week, which is a big production number, and lots of stuff going on both at work and personally. So just busy, but good.
Just busy. Well, we're happy to have you here, and it was good timing since your new piece started today. So I figure I'm going to mostly focus on that and what the reading wars are.
Yes.
And so, perfect. All right. Well, we'll come back in about a minute and a half, and then the first segment's till 12:48. I'm assuming that we'll want to go until the second segment, but if there's nothing left to say, I'll let you go. But otherwise, we'll come back and have another 8 minutes.
That's good. I'm here to serve.
All right. Sounds good.
Has results with reporters checking in from around the state.
Election coverage live Tuesday, April 4th, starting at 7 on your local Civic Media radio station, streaming on the Civic Media app.
Hey, this is Matt from Design Garden. Remember when the internet was new? Back then, you had to leave your house to start a business. Companies used to pay programmers bags of cash to get online. Now, small businesses can get online with a Facebook business page, or Squarespace, or Google My Business, or WordPress. But which tools should you use? Can you afford to go down the wrong path? Design Garden uses modern tools to build your website the right way. Find us online at design.garden. Again, that's design.garden.
This is Pat Greitlow from Up North News Radio. On the air, online, or on demand, make it a point to catch the first word on Wisconsin news, sports, and more weekday mornings from 6 to 8 all across the stations of the Civic Media Radio Network.
Baby, we was making straight A's, but we were stuck in the dark days. Don't take much to memorize your life. I feel like I've been hypnotized. And then that magic man, he come to town. Woo-wee, he done spun my head around.
Well, welcome back to As Goes Wisconsin. I am Kristen Bry. She is Jane Madnair, and we are shifting gears from the Wisconsin Supreme Court election. Unfortunately, we had to cut them off. I feel like we could have probably filled a whole hour with those two.
Easily.
But and now we're going to talk about something equally important, but not affected by the Wisconsin Supreme Court at all, and matters a lot, which is reading and the state of reading in Wisconsin, which is not great. Not great. And so returning for this segment is our guest, Alan Borsuk, who is a senior fellow in law and public policy at Marquette Law School and frequently still writes about education at his old employer, Milwaukee Journal-Sentinel, and in fact had his most recent piece published this morning. And I guess I was the one who told you that it dropped.
Well, I knew it was coming, but I didn't know when it was going to be posted. So.
And so, but it is, and you mentioned this when you were here the first time, in that there is a war going on about how to teach kids how to read, which feels like a dramatic word, but what is the war over as far as, is it ideology? Is it political? Is it ideology? Or what is, when you say it's a war, what does that look like?
Well, yes to all of the above. The people on both sides or all the hate the term reading war, but nonetheless, it's not inappropriate to use it. And it's been going on in one form or another, probably since the 1970s, but especially since the 1990s. You would think that reading would be a non-controversial and non-partisan subject. I mean, everyone's in favor of teaching kids to read. Who's opposed to that? Yet it becomes quite divisive. There's two different approaches to how to teach kids to read that manage to stir up people in big ways. One's generally been labeled either whole language or balanced literacy, and one's generally labeled phonics. That's oversimplifying both sides of it. I mean, I've been writing about lousy reading scores since the 1990s, especially in low income and Black and brown communities like the city of Milwaukee. But it's a problem across the spectrum. Some of the strongest advocacy currently is coming from really well-to-do districts. New Berlin's big on the subject. I was in Elmbrook in a school in Elm Grove a few weeks ago that's picking up on this, and because they think they have reading problems. Statewide, about a quarter of all the kids in the state are labeled as reading below basic level, which is a lot. And only about a third of kids are labeled as reading as proficient or advanced, which is actually kind of a high bar. The basic level of reading is, at least you're on the playing field. In a place like the city of Milwaukee, Milwaukee Public Schools, over half the kids are labeled as reading below basic. And that's at all grades. And that's just ominous, not only for the future of these kids individually, but ultimately for the vitality of the whole community economically and such. I mean, what can you do in the work world if you aren't a competent reader in today's world? So I think it's a big issue. I'm very hot about it myself.
No, I mean, it is a really big issue. And I guess, as you mentioned, that you've been talking about this since the 90s. I mean, the 90s was when I was going to school. And I had said this to Jane when we said the preview that you were coming. And I can't remember how I was taught to read. Like in these two camps that you're talking about is like phonics versus memorization, which I know is a gross simplification of those two things, but I would love to get more information on how both methodologies work. But like, I don't remember. I just know that I know how to read. And so this has been a problem since the 90s. And is it something that has consistently been a problem, or is it like dramatically dropping since in the more recently?
It's been consistently a problem, especially again in these, place like the city of Milwaukee or any of the urban centers nationwide. And the needle's moved hardly at all in all this time since the 90s.
Wow.
All these efforts, all these laws and reports and commissions and so on really haven't changed anything. In fact, scores got a bit worse nationwide during the pandemic period, and have dropped now. There was slight progress from the late 90s to the late teens, and now they've dropped back to the level they were at in 1992 nationwide. In the city of Milwaukee, and MPS, it hasn't moved. The percentage of proficient kids when it comes to reading has been 20% or lower all this time that I've written about it, and nothing's changed. So there really has not been much progress. Now, the large majority, well, I wouldn't say the large, different studies have different amounts. Large numbers of kids learn to read no matter how they're taught, and they become good readers. 40%, some say, 70%, some say. I'm betting you were one of those who became a good reader just because you did.
Well, it was also, I had parents who were very invested in reading to me and making, it's like that's part of it as well, as along with the education I got, and which I don't want to discredit the work my parents did.
These things matter, although not always as much as you might think. I have one of my daughters was a super reader as a kid, still is in fact a specialist in children's literature now. And she has two kids who have trouble reading, who both struggle. So it isn't only the parents and such. So let's say 60%, pick a number, of kids learn to read pretty well. Then you got 40% who aren't, and they need more help in some way. They need more structure. They need more something. So the difference, it's hard to summarize it. Phonics goes back to the 1800s and is more sounding out the letters in a word, understanding how to what's called decoding, to make sense of the letters, to put them together as a word, and then put together words as a sentence. Teaching in what's it's often labeled now the science of reading is more structured, a little more drill oriented, sometimes a lot more drill oriented, much more scripted than other things. The balanced literacy, which used to be called whole language more often, is kids basically learn to read by reading. Give them books and they'll pick it up from the context of, they don't emphasize the decoding thing, but they'll pick up a word from the context, from the pictures, from understanding a little bit which letters. The whole language approach is much more popular with teachers. Frankly, it's more fun to teach it. It's more creative. You know, love of books kind of stuff. The problem is that the critics, and there's been a surge of criticism, really powerful organizational effort nationwide around the science of reading, is saying that it doesn't work very well for these, like I said, say 40% of kids. They need more, and they need to know how to sound out a word. In fact, every kid knows how to sound out a word, but a lot of kids don't know how.
We're talking to Alan Borsuk, who is a senior fellow in law and public policy at Marquette Law School and just published his most recent article for Milwaukee Journal Sentinel on the science of reading, whole language, balanced literacy. How can Wisconsin resolve its reading wars and teach kids to read? And how much, and you're probably not going to have an actual answer for me, but because as you're saying, there's the 60% who they get it, and their brains work in a way that how it's being taught to them, they can absorb. And then 40%, for the sake of our conversation, it's harder. And how much of it, because I always come back to like, kids' brains work differently. There's some kids who are more adept at math than reading. There's some more kids who are like physical touching things versus the creative coming up with things. And so is there, I mean, if we're pegging this as a war between two sides and two fundamental ideologies of how to teach reading, isn't there also an argument that like it kind of depends on the kid?
Well, all the influences on a kid, the home life, whether you've got books in the home, the educational level of parents correlates very strongly with the educational success of kids. That's a broader subject than just reading. All the influences, you know, if you're, I heard a talk the other day by the chairman of the Milwaukee County Board. She said when she was growing up in the heart of the central city, she knew too much about what to do when you hear gunfire, and she would hide under her bed. She said, I would take a book and read under my bed. But nonetheless, if your days are being shaped by that kind of instability and lack of a sense of safety and counting on where you're going to sleep tonight or where you're going to eat, that shapes a kid's education. The problem is it's not so easy to change a lot of those outside forces. What's going on in a classroom is something that can be changed. And the science of reading advocates, who, as I said, they've been growing in influence and power for the last year or two now, especially. They say, yeah, it can make a big difference what goes on in a classroom. One of the leading experts on the science of reading is at UW-Madison, and he says, no, I'm not telling you how to solve lead poisoning. I'm not telling you how to solve a bunch of things, but I can tell you how a kid learns to read psychologically, and we can learn from that and do better. He's a pretty interesting guy to listen to. There are 32 states in the last several years that have passed laws requiring science of reading approaches or phonics approaches much more, and training of teachers to do it. Wisconsin is not one of them. It could become one of them before this state budget cycle is over in June or so.
Because what is the methodology that is right? Like it's right now it's more like sight words, because I have a 5-year-old niece who right now she has her sight words. So is that going back more to like the memorization and context clues way of reading? And that's what we're doing.
Yeah, that sounds to me like something you would associate with balanced literacy. Basically, there was this, if you go back to the 90s, the labels then were whole language and phonics, and they've been succeeded now by science of reading and balanced literacy. People realized that things weren't getting better. So about 15 to 20 years ago, the balanced literacy, the whole language people said, you're right, we need to do more about phonics. We need to have kids be able to understand the sounds of a letter, that D makes this sound and G makes this sound. So they added a little bit more phonics and called it balanced literacy. The science of reading folks would still say, no, that doesn't work. It's not good enough. It's not structured enough. It's not fixed enough on goals. So the war goes on.
So the war goes on. So I guess, does this ultimately, like, what makes this so political? Because it seems like you said, where we started, it seems no one's against kids reading.
Right.
And so it feels like one of these things that feels very obvious of like, let's try the thing that could work. So where is the obstacles or the criticism towards changing what we've been doing that hasn't changed? It doesn't seem like we're necessarily getting any better where we're at. And like, why is this ultimately become a political thing that feels like it should not be political at all?
I wish I knew the answer to that. In some ways, I can explain it, and in some ways, it still mystifies me. Because, like I said, who's opposed to teaching kids to read? It became very political. The phonics side of things was associated with being more conservative, and then spilled over into politically conservative. And whole language was more what teachers wanted, what progressive side of thinking, love of books and love of reading and so on. So it was much more popular with the reading establishment, including in Wisconsin and the Wisconsin State Reading Association, which is the reading teachers' fairly powerful organization. When the No Child Left Behind law was passed in 2002 by the U.S. Congress and President George W. Bush, there was a big push included in that for phonics. There was a national commission called the National Reading Panel. It became closely associated with Bush and with Republican politics, and very much opposed by teachers' unions and Democrats. So it became this partisan thing that you were a bad person if you were a conservative and didn't support phonics, and you were a bad person if you were a liberal and you did support phonics. So
all right, well, we're going to keep talking about this with Alan Borsuk when we come back, because it's fascinating and frustrating. But stick with us. This is As Goes Wisconsin.
On Tuesday, April 4th.
All right. So when we come back, do you have more to say on that question that I just asked?
Well, I think that the needle's moving towards the science of reading people, and on the progressive side, there's some moderation. So I could make that point if you want.
Okay, perfect. And then I actually, because I feel like we might as well explain what the Mississippi Miracle is and why people keep comparing us to Mississippi. So we can talk about that as well. And then is there anything else you want to try to squeeze in the last segment?
I can keep talking about this for. You
can probably talk about it all day.
Well, that I have been visiting schools where they're doing this more science of reading approach, and it's really interesting. And I am planning to write about it.
Okay.
Coming soon.
Perfect. Yeah. Then we'll touch on that too.
Risk test today at doihaveprediabetes.org. Brought to you by the Ad Council and its pre-diabetes awareness partners.
Weather brought to you by Wisconsin Cheese and Popcorn Shop at civicmedia.us/shop. Home of buttery popcorn treats and make your mouth water. Caramel, cookies and cream, strawberry shortcake, and more. civicmedia.us/shop. Part of the proceeds benefit Wisconsin athletic programs.
Here's your updated forecast on the Shaw. Cloudy skies this afternoon with a chance for isolated storms. Highs level off around 63. South winds 10 to 15 miles an hour. Isolated thunderstorms again tonight. Lows level off around 34. Cloudy. Mixed precipitation likely tomorrow. High temperatures reach up to 39. Cloudy skies expected. A dusting of snow tomorrow. For Civic Media, I'm meteorologist Eric Height. Currently, it's 55 degrees.
The Shaw 101 FM, Brookfield's choice for News Talk Radio. Streaming 24/7 at WAUKradio.com.
Welcome back to As Goes Wisconsin. I am Kristen Bry. She is Jane Madnair, and we are talking to Alan Borsuk, who is a senior fellow in law and public policy at Marquette Law School. And we're talking about the reading wars and basically the not so great literacy rates that we have in Wisconsin right now and the argument over how to fix them. And so going back to how this has become such a political thing, whether or not it should be, it is. And so it seems like there is a more momentum towards going to the science of reading.
Yes, like I said, there's like 32 states, many of them in the last since 2021, started 2021, that have passed science of reading laws. Most of them are Republican-controlled states, but there is some moderation in this because people realize reading scores are bad nationwide. And especially, the kids who are dealt the better cards in life do better, and the kids who are dealt the weaker hands do worse, but nonetheless, problem across the board. So it's showing up more in what you might regard as more liberal states, and there's some change in the dynamics of who's supporting what. Is it paying off to go switch to the science of reading? The example everyone points to is Mississippi. Mm-hmm. Mississippi was the first state in the country, I believe it was in 2013, to pass a science of reading law. And over the next few years, at that time they were at the very bottom of the list. They've moved up now to being about the middle of the pack. They haven't shot up to number one or anything, but there was serious improvement in fourth grade reading particularly. Critics would point out not so much in eighth grade, and so there's some question of whether it lasts. But nonetheless, Mississippi had the biggest advances in the country in the last 8 years or so. And so this became known as the Mississippi Miracle, and everyone's pointing to it. It's not a miracle in the sense that suddenly every kid could read great, but there was big progress. All these other states that have passed laws, are they seeing big progress? Generally not like that, but they would... the advocates would say it's too early, it takes a few years, it involves retraining teachers. One of the best ways to tell the difference between phonics, a science of reading school and a non-science of reading school is to go to the schools, which isn't so easy to do. But if you walked into a classroom, you would know right away the difference. I've been spending some time in Cudahy, which is a district that's gone big into science of reading. I'm going to write a story about it, I hope, soon. I've been having trouble getting time to do it, but what they're doing is really interesting. And they had not the worst reading scores around, but not so good, and they were dissatisfied. So what can we do to improve? If I had one point to make here, the degree of indifference, of lax attitudes, I mean, just not making this a priority, there a degree of a sense of urgency across the board has always been pretty shocking. And I think now we're in a period where there is more of a sense of urgency that we got to do something for kids. And whether that's the science of reading, I'm actually kind of neutral a little bit on that question.
Oh, interesting.
But I'm not neutral on the question of, do we need to make this a priority?
Well, and I guess it goes back, does it have to be one or the other? Like, are we putting these against each other and labeling it as a war because the camps are so adamant that it has to be one way or another versus just the general making it a priority and understanding that it could be more complex than just one or the other?
That's a really tough question. I think in general, you got to kind of pick what horse you're going to ride. And they are different horses that kind of amble at different paces. The science of reading people would say, no, you can't be a little bit of this and a little bit of that because it just waters it all down. There's a set of podcasts that came out a few months ago about what's wrong with balanced literacy that's been basically revolutionary. It's had a huge impact nationwide.
What's it called? I can put it in today's show notes.
It is called Sold a Story. It's by APM, a woman named Emily Hanford. She's a journalist. She's not a reading expert. She'd admit that. But these podcasts are fascinating to listen to and answer your question, at least from that standpoint, in a powerful way. They're really interesting. And they just eviscerate the reading establishment.
Oh, that's interesting. And so I
Yeah.
guess
And she was in Madison recently, and she's coming to Milwaukee in a few months. So
Oh,
there's interest in having her around. I spent an hour with her in Madison a few weeks ago, and she's become a lightning rod figure in this whole.
for this topic. So I guess
Yeah.
when we talked about Mississippi and it went from being the bottom to the middle, which
It's about
state's
on
number
level
one?
with Wisconsin these days.
Yes, but which state's number one and what are they doing?
Well, that's a really good question. For a number of years, it's been Massachusetts.
Okay.
And back in the mid 90s, Massachusetts made some really big changes in its education system, was kind of doing okay on what's the closest thing there is to a national testing standard. It's called NAEP, the National Assessment of Educational Progress, including that they demanded that all teachers of young kids, all reading teachers, pass a course on how to teach reading that's quite science of reading oriented.
Huh.
And within a few years, they shot up to number one in the country. They also put more money into schools, especially schools serving low-income populations. In 2012, Wisconsin brought the same test that Massachusetts is using to here, and you have to pass this test, at least ostensibly, if you're going to teach reading to like kids through kindergarten through fourth grade. It's called the Fundamentals of Reading Test, or FORT. And it didn't change anything in Wisconsin. So what's the difference between Wisconsin and Massachusetts? To be honest, my own reading is they were a lot more serious about it in Massachusetts, and the State Department of Public Instruction, the institutions of higher education, and the reading establishment weren't really that eager about FORT or any changes like that. So they didn't really they kept finding ways to get kids to pass or teacher candidates to pass the test, but they didn't really put their foot on the gas, and we're paying for that.
Oh, that's super interesting. Well, as you continue to cover this, we will continue to have you on the show to come tell us about what you're writing, since we can't just read your articles to the audience. And so, Alan Borsuk, thank you so much for joining us. You are always welcome. This is super interesting. And hopefully, for the sake of the kids, we can start making some progress here.
I totally agree with that, and I'm glad to be here, and I'd be glad to come back.
All right, we'll see you soon. All right,
Good.
we're going to take a break for the top of the hour news, and we'll be back in a minute to talk about what's been going on at Disney. I would not get in the way of Bob Iger. That's all I'm saying. This is As Goes Wisconsin.
Thank you very much.
You are never far away from your favorite radio station. We're always streaming on TuneIn and the Civic Media app. And if you missed your favorite show or game, listen to a podcast of it anytime on the app or our website, civicmedia.us.
Dueling Tangents with Luke and Brian.
I'm really trying hard not to go insane from the mind screw that is this situation with the I was going to say the GAB, but now it's the WEC, which was audited by the LAB, and then it's now screwed up by the GOP. We're all SOL. Good for us. Congratulations.
Look at all those acronyms. Yeah.
We're the winners.
Tune in for Dueling Tangents every weekday at 2.
I love this song. I love nachos.
Loving everything? You might be buzzed.
You know what I'd love? A ride when it's time to head out.
If you see a buzzed warning sign, call for a ride when it's time to go home. Buzz driving is drunk driving.
You are listening to WAUK 540 AM Jackson, W266 DR Waukesha, always streaming on the Civic Media app.
This is CBS News on the Hour, presented by Indeed.com.
I'm Steve Kathan. From an unprecedented indictment against a former president to an unpredictable scene that could develop Tuesday when Donald Trump is arraigned in New York. Former NYPD Deputy Commissioner Richard Esposito is a CBS News consultant.
They can move thousands of cops if needed to Trump Tower, to bridges, and certainly they can ring the courtroom and make sure the former president's entrance to the district attorney's office is a smooth one.
CBS News correspondent Stephen Portnoy.
A court spokesperson confirms the arraignment. The initial proceeding in the People versus Donald Trump is set for 2:15 p.m. Tuesday in Manhattan Criminal Court. A law enforcement source tells CBS News, by arrangement with court security, Trump will not be handcuffed at booking because he's a Secret Service protectee. Dozens of Secret Service agents and officers will be involved in facilitating Trump's movements, from Mar-a-Lago in Florida to his New York residence to the courthouse.
Well, city leaders in Minneapolis have reached a deal with the state to overhaul policing more than 3 years after an officer killed George Floyd. Mayor Jacob Fry.
This agreement helps to ensure that the policy itself meets the road, it meets the ground, that neighbors and officers alike feel that change.
A state report found the Minneapolis Police Department
Welcome to the 1 o'clock no sour haha funny hour. No sour happy fun time haha power hour. Welcome to the no sour fun time haha power hour.
Oh, she did it.
I got it.
I think she's got it. I think she's got it. By George, she's got it. By George, she's got it.
Moving Wisconsin forward, one joke at a time. This is Kristen Bry with As Goes Wisconsin.
Yada, yada, yada.
Hello, Wisconsin!
Hello, Wisconsin. Welcome to the No Sour Haha Fun Time Power Hour, which is extra haha and fun time because it's Friday.
It is Friday.
We have 1 hour, and then Jane and I are free to relax.
Yes.
Basically. But this has been a great week of shows.
It really has.
And I'm ready to sleep. But not yet.
Not
We
yet.
still have this hour.
We got good stuff coming up.
We have some good stuff coming up, and had a good hour of guests. So if you missed either of those, I guess any of those, because there was 3 in total, 2 in the first half hour, Bill McCoshen and Scott Ross talking about the election coming up on Tuesday.
We definitely have to get them back.
Oh, yeah.
Because
Especially because I know that Bill had a big day of press
today.
Yeah, I think he was on Up Front. He was on other radio shows. And so I forgive him. I will not take it personally that he was a little late to our segment today because I think he was running around. But certainly having both of them come on and, duke it out a little bit.
But as you said, it is part of the goal of this show and actually of civic media is to hear different sides of things and at least not live in a bubble.
Well, certainly. And that's why I wish we would have had more time with Bill, because when I asked him, what is firing the base? Like what has gotten conservatives fired up? I wish I would have been able to push him a little bit harder, because his answer was, the objective nature of the Supreme Court. And I was like, really? Like that's what's firing people up? I can see why people who are actual legal experts, people who follow this stuff super closely, for them, that maybe the purity of that is very important. But to counterbalance the guttural instinct, I think that the abortion issue is front and center for so many people, and people have very strong feelings on that. It's hard for me to imagine that there is a ton of people with the same emotional response on the conservative side as people are having about rights being taken away.
Well, and I certainly haven't seen any keep the gerrymander signs. Keep it, keep it, keep it. It's so good. And because, it just, no.
Yeah. And so, to be fair to everyone involved, we get to sit here as a media and be objective. We're not carrying water. We have our opinions, but we're not strategists, right?
No one's paying us.
No one's paying us.
For that.
We're not pushing a message because on behalf of campaigns or on behalf of a party, we get to be pretty honest. I'm pretty honest. Are you pretty honest?
Yeah.
Yeah. And so I also, he's not going to come on here and be like, well, wish we would have gotten more people fired up. And so, but it's just the instinct of what is, besides just rooting for tribalism and rooting for your side, the issue that is gotten people excited to go, like in a 2016 Trump excited to go turnout type attitude. But they were at the noon hour. Alan Borsuk, always super interesting to talk to as far as education in Wisconsin, and been, literally reporting on this since I was a kid. And so if you want to go back and listen to that conversation, you can always find it at asgoeswisconsin.com/listen, which is where you can always find the show notes, which is where I put in links to the videos and articles and everything we reference that you can't see because this is a radio show,
right,
and a podcast.
But if you want to learn more and you can read the links, you can read all the articles and all that stuff. It's really a wealth of information.
And so, so go back. Actually, this whole week you should go back and listen. The Piper Parabo interview yesterday was fantastic. Corey Ryan Forrester on Wednesday was fantastic.
Yeah,
we really had some great guests, and we have a great guest, another big guest in the lead up to Tuesday's election. Mr. Bradley Whitford is going to be here. And
wait, the West Wing, Bradley
The West
Whitford?
Wing, The Handmaid's Tale, Billy Madison, lots of different, been an actor for a very long time, went to Madison East. It's originally from Wisconsin, still very involved in Wisconsin politics. So if you have ideas of what we should ask him, shoot us an email, asgoeswisconsin@civicmedia.us, because that's what I will be thinking about this weekend. Is we already burned pitching Wisconsin sitcoms, so I got to come up with
David Mandel.
To David Mandel 2 weeks ago, and so now I have to come up with a new fun game because he'll be here for a half hour. So gotta put our thinking caps on.
Also coming up on Monday, just to book this earlier this morning, author Jeff Charlet is going to be joining us. And he has done many books about some of the far-right Christian movements in this country, and recently spent some time in Wisconsin talking to people who are pretty extreme.
Yeah.
So he's gonna stay. He'll be with us for half an hour or two on Monday, starting at 12 noon.
Perfect. Yeah. Well, so another big show.
Mm-hmm.
And then we'll turn off the show and go listen to the Brewers game, because they'll be there, and that game starts at 1 on Monday, and we'll wrap up our show and then go cheer on the Brewers. But for today, since we still have a show today, I guess the first question I want to ask, and we'll take your stories as you have them. But April Fool, I mean, this is the end of March.
Yep.
April Fools is tomorrow,
right? And
I feel like maybe we're too old for April Fools, but you never know.
Some people do this well into their old age.
And I'm not a huge prankster. Like, my mind doesn't think of that way. I'm like, ooh, how can we play a fun joke on someone, or like take advantage of people being gullible? Like, that's not necessarily the way my brain works. But I like, a harmless prank. The pranks on like The Office. When everything's in Jell-O.
Who doesn't love that?
Or I saw a great one with some college dorm room girls, and I don't know if this was April Fool's specifically, but while their roommate was home for Christmas, they literally gift wrapped her entire bedroom.
Yeah, I saw it. Everything,
the walls, everything. So she just walked in, and like the I don't even know how many rolls of wrapping paper they went through to do that. But I mean, it's annoying because then you have to undo everything, but it doesn't hurt anything. And it's like the applaud the effort it took to actually get it done. So, but then sometimes they're just mean. And I think it's like a bad joke. It's like a punching down joke where like, it's just not very good.
Yes.
So if you have a great April Fool's story, either something that was done to you or maybe that you did to someone else, we would love to hear it. 844-967-2789. That is 844-96-PARTY. Since we will not be on air on April Fools, if you got a good story, let's hear it. As far as a good prank, not a mean prank, but I have one that my brother and I did to his girlfriend at the time.
Okay.
And I will share that in the next segment. Because for now, as we're waiting for people to share their stories, again, 844-967-2789. What is your best April Fool's Day story? This is not an April Fool's Day joke.
No, it's not.
This is real. And I'm sure Ron DeSantis wishes it was a April Fool's Day joke, but it is not. It is looks like Disney has added a new character to the Magic Kingdom, the troll.
Okay.
So, as you might be aware, since the Don't Say Gay bill, Ron DeSantis has been at odds, let's say, with Disney.
Yeah, big time.
And the massive company that is, the destination for why a lot of people go to Florida every year. But the company quietly entered agreements that rendered the board Florida Governor Ron DeSantis had handpicked to govern the special tax district surrounding Disney World nearly powerless. And so basically, for 55 years, the state allowed Disney to make its own rules for developing the land where its theme park sits. But after the company criticized the so-called Don't Say Gay bill,
right,
DeSantis installed his own board to run the district. And with the new board in place, it looked like Ron DeSantis had won until Disney pulled a little switcheroo. And when the board was still Disney controlled, it entered into restrictive covenants for the land that, one, bar the new board from using the Disney name or any of the company's IP, including Mickey Mouse, and gives the district the right to review any proposed changes to properties in the district. So basically, they're just allowed to like maintain roads now. And the best part of this is that this agreement is valid until 21 years after the death of the last survivor of the descendants of King Charles III, King of England.
What?
And so this is, I mean, I think it's probably Bob Iger is now CEO of Disney again. And I don't like, when I think of Bob Iger or like Jeff Bezos or some of these like super high powered CEOs, like I think of Succession. Like I just think of some of these CEOs as like, I will crush you. Like you think that you can go toe to toe with me. I will absolutely crush you.
You're going to lose.
And I can't help but think that they were like, because they just went around and everything was public. They did this everything so far is like, I was reading an NPR article about this morning that NPR even said like mea culpa, that like they did this, all of the meetings where they were passing all these things was public knowledge or open to the public, open to be reported on. Everyone had access to know that this was happening and no one raised a red flag. And because Disney was just acting super compliant with like, okay, we will go along with this and just bided their time. And yet it sounds like, at least on its face, because there's certainly going to be lawsuits about this.
Sure.
But it doesn't necessarily sound like there's a lot of grounds to actually reverse what they did, which it was already such an overreach of Ron DeSantis, and the fact that like conservatives who say small government, like it was such a backhand to that. But hats off, Bob Iger.
Well, hey, the mouse has got some awfully good attorneys.
All right, we will be right back. We want to hear your April Fool's stories. 844-967-2789.
Civic Media promised you something big to celebrate our new and still growing network of radio stations. When we announced the one-day $1 million advertising giveaway for Wisconsin businesses, you responded.
Just wanted to echo your sentiments about the advertising. That's really a cool deal and really remarkable.
$1 million of free advertising. Now, if you missed this chance to work with our team, go to civicmedia.us and click on the sponsorship tab. One of our local sales pros will get right back to you. civicmedia.us and sponsorship.
I was just curious as to why you called it the Paul Revere Show.
The Paul Revere Show is named this way because the poem that we all know, the famous ride, the poem was written to rally the troops to fight slavery and fight for democracy. And so I named the show the Paul Revere Show because I thought it was the time to get on the air and talk about democracy.
The Paul Revere Show with Mark Thompson. Listen Mondays 7 to 8 p.m. always on the Civic Media app.
What grows in the forest? Our imagination and our family bonds. The forest is closer than you think. Find a forest near you at discovertheforest.org. Brought to you by the United States Forest Service and the Ad Council.
Fear you may be missing out? We're always streaming on TuneIn and the Civic Media app. Enjoy listening live or catch up by finding the podcast at civicmedia.us or wherever you enjoy listening to your podcasts.
Here's your updated forecast on the Shaw. Cloudy skies this afternoon with a chance for isolated storms. Highs level off around 63. South winds 10 to 15 miles an hour. Isolated thunderstorms again tonight. Lows level off around 34. Cloudy. Mixed precipitation likely tomorrow. High temperatures reach up to 39. Cloudy skies expected. A dusting of snow tomorrow. For Civic Media, I'm meteorologist Eric Height. Currently, it's 57 degrees.
The Shaw 101 FM, New Berlin's choice for news talk radio. Streaming 24/7 at WAUKradio.com.
Waking up in the morning, gotta be fresh, gotta go downstairs, gotta have my bowl.
Is this Rebecca Black?
Yes. I thought you must know this song.
I was a little too old to
get on that.
To get on this anthem.
The Friday.
The Friday. I think I was in my mid-20s, and it was certainly in the crowd of being like, this is so dumb.
The
But-
12-year-olds loved it.
Yeah, I think so.
They did.
I forgot what she ended up doing. Rebecca Black. Just
a flash. She was a flash.
She was a flash,
She
but I
was.
feel like she ended up doing something. I mean, she had super rich parents, which is how that whole thing got made in the first place.
Oh,
Because
no
her parents
kidding.
basically like could fund her recording her own song.
Oh, wow.
And then the internet got wind of it. We're like, wow, this is awful. But it is Friday.
She's got 2 independent EPs.
There you go.
Her debut studio album, Let Her Burn, was just released in February.
There you go. So she's still doing stuff.
She's still making music.
But tomorrow is April Fool's Day, and I think some people are waiting to find out whether or not Elon is punking everyone. Because tomorrow is supposed to be the day where Twitter will begin removing legacy verified badges.
Oh boy.
From individuals and organizations approved under the company's previous criteria, which, on most social medias, when you had the little blue check mark, it basically meant that you were you were either a company, it verified you were who you said you were.
Exactly.
And it was companies, celebrities, journalists,
people in the public eye.
And now, I mean, I would say that I already on Twitter, because now you can, it's been like there's been the legacy verification, and then there's the people who are paying $8 or $12 a month or whatever it is to get the check mark. So now when I see a check mark, I don't really take it seriously as far as someone that I'm supposed to know who this person is.
Sure.
Versus the random person.
Right.
I will, and I love him dearly. And I doubt that he's listening, so I'm going to throw him under the bus. But my brother started paying for Twitter. And so now my brother, who has 300 followers, has a little blue check mark. And he doesn't even tweet that much. He mostly consumes information versus me, who recently, now on As Goes Wisconsin, we're past 8,000 followers.
Yay!
No check mark. And so it's like, I feel like the blue check mark on Twitter now means nothing.
Absolutely.
It just means you paid to have it.
Yes.
And there are other benefits that go with paying for it. I think you get an edit button. There's other features to it. But as far as the status symbol of having a blue check mark meaning something, and also for the kind of quick identifying of people who are verified who've been potentially engaged with your account. But Elon's trying to say all people should have equal access to getting it and all this other stuff. But I still think it's dumb. But he's been saying that because for a while they were going to have the legacy and the paid blue check marks. But they're saying as of tomorrow, they will begin removing legacy verified badges from individuals and organizations. And going forward, only paying customers will be granted the verified check marks, which are now blue for individuals, gold for brands and companies, and gray for governmental organizations.
Oh, my.
And so I think for individuals, it's I don't know, I think it's somewhere between $8 and $12 a month. But Twitter says it's going to charge businesses and organizations $1,000 per month, including nonprofits and governments, to retain their verification status. And so it's suspect to me that they're doing this on April 1st. But who knows? I mean, they do need to make money. They're hemorrhaging money right now.
Big time. Yes.
And so I just don't know. Maybe for companies, it'll be worth it because look, we all saw what happened with Eli Lilly in that their stock prices plummeted when someone bought a verified blue check mark and then
claiming to be them.
created an Eli Lilly account. But I don't know. I just don't see the appeal for this as an individual. Like, I think, there's other arguments that, like, because now there's a For You page on Twitter, which they just stole from TikTok, which is instead of just seeing, you have your following page, which is the people you've chosen to follow, and then you have your For You page, which is then giving you things of people you don't necessarily follow that they think you might be interested in,
Right.
which is exactly how TikTok works. But, if you don't get only people who are verified are going to be pushed on the For You page and stuff. But it's like, I don't know. I don't know if this is it. So we'll find out tomorrow if this is a joke or not. And maybe we'll leave it up to the masses to talk about it a little bit more next week.
And one of the best things about April Fool's Day is the onmilwaukee.com April Fool's edition.
That is true.
It's magnificent.
That's true.
They spend all year, I think, coming up with bogus stories based, with a grain of truth in them. And I highly recommend you check out their website tomorrow on Milwaukee.com because they're hilarious.
I always forget.
They're just hilarious. That is the best thing about April Fool's Day.
Because you don't seem like someone who is a big April Fool's person.
Well, you know how I dislike surprises.
You hate surprises.
So can you imagine how happy I would be if I opened my car door and a bunch of ping pong balls fell out of it? Yeah, I'd be thrilled.
Has anyone ever gotten you?
Not that I can remember.
Not that was like a lasting image of you, then you went to jail because you killed them.
They can't find the bodies, so there's no crime. Where's the crime?
That's a good point. Right? I would never dare prank you, Jane.
I think
all right.
That's wise.
Yeah. All right. When we come back, we're going to be talking to Mike Rizuka, who is the president of the Greater Milwaukee Association of Realtors. We're going to be talking about the Home and Garden show at the Wisconsin State Fair this weekend. All of the home improvement and garden stuff you'll ever want to see or have or learn about. We're going to talk about that when we come back. This is As Goes Wisconsin.
So excited. We so excited. We gonna have a ball today. Tomorrow is Saturday and Sunday comes afterwards. I don't want this weekend to end.
R&B, Rebecca Black. So chilling in the front side, in the backseat, I'm driving, cruising, fast lanes, switching lanes with a car by my side. Come passing by is a school bus in front of me. Next TikTok, wanna stream. Check my time, it's Friday, it's a weekend, we gonna have fun. Come on, y'all.
A progressive voice from Beaver Dam to Kenosha. WAUK 540 AM. Always streaming at WAUKradio.com.
CBS News Special Report. It is all hands on deck in New York following a grand jury's decision to indict former President Trump. Here's CBS's Jim Axelrod.
The NYPD has ordered every employee to report in full uniform today. That includes roughly 36,000 officers and 19,000 civilian employees.
Mr. Trump continues to deny allegations ahead of his arraignment Tuesday. CBS's Robert Costa.
Trump believes that the Republican Party, however, will rally around his side as he continues to seek the White House once again. Believes that his grievances, his criticism of this investigation will make Republicans feel like outsiders with the legal system, and he will try to stoke that feeling as he continues to move toward the nomination.
And supporters aren't deterred.
Who cares what he does with other women? I don't care, as long as was doing a good job running our country, which he was.
Trump's the first former president to face criminal charges. CBS News Special Report. I'm Monica Ricks.
WAUK 540 AM. New Berlin's choice for news talk radio. Streaming 24/7 at WAUKradio.com.
For Civic Media News, I'm Terry Bell. Here's what you need to know. University of Wisconsin students will see their tuition go up for the first time in 10 years. The Board of Regents approved the increase yesterday. Wisconsin enacted a tuition freeze in 2013. But
did I pronounce his name correctly?
Ruzicka.
7 other charges dropped, including sending threatening messages to Evers. He faces 5 years in prison when he's sentenced in June. In sports, the Bucks lost big to the Celtics last night. And Minnesota State's Mike Hastings is the Badgers' new men's hockey coach. I'm Terry Bell, and this is Civic Media News.
Don't you deserve a job you love? Civic Media is preserving hometown radio, broadcasting from main streets across Wisconsin, and we're hiring radio advertising sales professionals to join our rapidly growing network of local radio stations. If you have a connection to your community, prior sales experience, and want to earn an outstanding living where you and your hard work is appreciated, you should apply right now. Find more information on our website, civicmedia.us. Click on the Careers tab.
On Tuesday, April 4th, we have a chance to elect people who will do the right thing for Wisconsin and for Waukesha. We need experienced leaders we can trust. Vote for Janet Protasewicz for Supreme Court, Fred Stram for Waukesha County Circuit Court, and Diane Voigt for Waukesha School Board. Janet, Fred, Diane, because we can trust them. Vote on April 4th. Your vote and your voice matter. Paid for by Blue Sky Waukesha.
Hey, this is Matt from Design Garden. Remember when the internet was new? Back then, you had to leave your house to start a business. Companies used to pay programmers bags of cash to get online. Now, small businesses can get online with a Facebook business page, or Squarespace, or Google My Business, or WordPress. But which tools should you use? Can you afford to go down the wrong path? Design Garden uses modern tools to build your website the right way. Find us online at design.garden. Again, that's design.garden.
To protect his family from disaster, Steve used his camera phone. Done. By taking pictures of his important documents, Steve can always have them stored online. Learn more simple disaster prep tips at ready.gov. A message from FEMA and the Ad Council.
Another summer day is coming.
Welcome back to As Goes Wisconsin. I am Kristen Bry. She is Jane Madnair. And this weekend, the 97th annual Realtors Home and Garden Show returns to State Fair Park's Wisconsin Exposition Center on March 24th through April 2nd. More than 350 exhibitors will be there. And I know Jane's so excited.
I am. I love this show.
And so on the phone with us is Mike Ruzicka, who is the president of Greater Milwaukee Association of Realtors, to tell us what you could expect if you find yourself in the Home and Garden Show. Mike, welcome to the show.
Oh, thanks a lot. I'm glad to be here.
So I guess Jane loves this show. I've never been to this show. So for those of us who've never been, explain what to expect at something like the Home and Garden Show.
Well, as you mentioned, there are 350 exhibitors, and they cover a whole range of household appliances to windows, anything you need to improve your house. We really specialize in making sure that people know, that they can improve the curb appeal of their home, which is extremely important if you're thinking about selling or just to maintain the value of your house. Also, the interior. During the pandemic, a lot of people decided to really take stock of their house and improve the inside because they spend a lot of time in it. And that extends to like patios and a little bit of outdoor stuff. So we got, I think, 8,000 square feet of landscape displays. And it's one of the main features of our show historically. We've always had a lot of landscaping and outdoor displaying, and it's really a lot of fun.
And those landscape displays, Mike, are usually so spectacular. And considering the weather, at least tomorrow, is going to be terrible, and today is not so great, you can just go hang around on some of these patios and pergolas because they're so beautiful, and just pretend like they're like they're yours.
Yeah, today is a perfect day. This weekend's going to be a good time. The weather's going to be perfect outside to stay inside. And the show, a lot of people just kind of peruse the landscape area. And what's nice is there are a lot of rock walls and sitting areas in the landscape displays. You can kind of just hang out and kind of get a feel for it, and whether you like it, and kind of and picture it at your house as well.
And Kristen and her husband are new homeowners. So,
oh, perfect.
Like you said, any question you have, anything you're thinking about installing, any drywall questions or basement guys or drain tiles or right. I mean, everybody's there.
Yeah, anything from shingles down to basement stuff. There's someone there that can answer any question. We also, if you go to the website, mkehgs.com, we have a list of all the seminars going on during the show.
Oh.
We have there's a seminar stage that does things like, how to do small plantings and things like that. And there's also a cooking demonstration stage. So between those two, there's stuff going on all day long.
And so I guess like when we were talking about sitting, are there people who just come and hang out, or is like when you go, is there stuff you should ask questions and talk to the different exhibitors? Is there any like activities as far as like hands-on like learning, or do some people just come and like is it a very zen situation as far as like the rock walls and just like chill out?
You can do both. A lot of people do come and walk around, and like I said, they'll talk to a few vendors if they're thinking about putting new windows in their house, just to get an idea of what's all involved in it. Just logistically how long it takes to get the windows and the cost and all that kind of thing. And then people just hang out by the gardens and enjoy them.
And I will say, there are certainly things, little shoppy things, and people sell outdoor decorations and things you can put in your garden and things like that. You don't quite have the pitchers that the state fair does with like the mop man, but there's stuff stuff to buy, certainly.
Yeah, no cream puffs, but we do have like garden gnomes, those types of things. There are a lot of like point of sale outdoor decorations and things like that you can really kind of spend a lot of time looking at and trying to decide whether it would look good at your house.
If you need yard tchotchkes, this is a good place to go.
Exactly.
All right.
To go.
So I guess with the 350 different exhibitors, are they all Wisconsin companies, or are there people traveling from out of town? I guess both as exhibitors or even as people who are excited to go to the show.
We have a lot of there are a lot of local exhibitors. There are a few from out of town. A lot of the like Pella Windows, for example, is a national brand, but they have a local presence. We have both. There's the national companies and a lot of local ones as well. Actually, all the landscapers are local. Like Dean from Aquatica is probably the main feature when you walk in the front. Aquatica has a huge pool. It actually looks like a pond with koi fish in it, and they're one of the well-known local company.
We're talking to Mike Ruzicka, who's the president of the Greater Milwaukee Association of Realtors, about the Home and Garden Show happening now. I guess it's not this weekend. It already started. It started on March 24th. And so I guess as 97 years, and I guess I don't know how long you have been president, but as far as how is this thing, I can't imagine, because I feel like modern day conventions and shows like this, I know what that looks like. Like I can see the pictures, but like, in the history of this show, do you have much like knowledge as how it's evolved over time?
Yeah, it's kind of funny. Going back, decades, in the 50s, they used to actually construct a house on the state park grounds, and then they would have a drawing for someone to win the house.
Oh wow!
Actually,
seriously?
Yeah, we don't do that anymore. I can't imagine that. Yeah,
that's crazy.
Mm-hmm. And so it really has evolved, and you have to evolve. You have to keep up with the times and changes and things like that. Now there's just so much technology involved in houses, from the Nest type of thermostats to the windows themselves. They've got a lot of technology involved, and appliances are crazy. They basically talk to you. It has evolved a lot over even the last, I'd say, 15 years. It's changed a lot.
I just have this picture in my head now, Mike, of 97 years ago. There were 5 guys sitting around. One's got bricks and the other one has showing how to people make fire. I don't know. I just
how to decorate your cave.
Yeah,
exactly.
Early cave drawings 101,
And so how has the show been going? I mean, since it started on the 24th, how's it been going?
Good. Actually, our attendance is up from last year. Although last Saturday we had that snowstorm, so it kind of put the brakes on things a little while until the snow cleared up in the afternoon, and then the evening was pretty well attended. But this week we started back up on Wednesday. Thursday were really well attended. I was just at the show a little while ago, and the aisles are pretty full. And so we're expecting this last weekend to be really a good one.
Yeah, you should be pretty busy. Well, let's talk about real estate in general, Mike, in the Milwaukee area. It was a seller's market for the last couple of years. Is that still the case?
Kind of. It depends on the price point. So, if you look at prices above, say, 500 to 750 and up, it's a little bit slower. I wouldn't say it's a buyer's market, but it's definitely slower than it was during the pandemic. Under 500 is doing very well. We're not seeing multiple offers like we were during the pandemic to the extent we did during the pandemic. So there aren't 30 offers on a property, but they're a well-priced, good quality house, good school district, and good curb feel. It'll probably get 2 or 3 offers on it.
And so interest rates, like the slowly but still climbing interest rates, has not taken down demand that much?
No, it hasn't. And the
Interesting.
reason is after the Great Recession, the banks and regulators got really specific and tight on their how much they would lend out to buyers. And so all the buyers that are around now are really good credit risks. So even though interest rates went up a little bit, it might knock some people out of the market because just increasing costs and they can't keep up with it hopefully for a short period of time. But the banks, when they evaluate buyers, they take into account, okay, you need a little extra money to purchase a house because interest rates went up, but there's still just incredible credit risks. So anybody that's out there buying can definitely buy and keep up with their mortgage. And so it hasn't, it's slowed things down just because it's reduced the number of people that are eligible to buy or can buy. But overall, it hasn't been a horrible change in the market. And the interest rates are fluctuating. I think they might be. I haven't checked them this week, but they're in the 6% range. I think one of the things buyers need to kind of readjust their mental framework around is that the days of 3% interest rates are probably gone.
Mm-hmm.
I always say interest rates were on sale over the last 10 years, and sale's gone now because just the economy and the dynamics have changed so much that the overall economy doesn't need those 3% interest rates. So they've kind of risen to 6%, which is kind of a sweet spot historically. Even 8%, 6 to 8% is really a good range. And so I think we're going to be in that area for quite a while. And now they're at 6%, which is it's a good deal.
And it's interesting that you say that, Mike, too, because interest rates were kept unnaturally low after 2008, and people kind of forgot about that and thought, well, this is just normal.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So I think we're going back to that. I think I think the market's going. The biggest problem we have right now is a lack of inventory. If we had inventory, prices would moderate a little bit, but there just is nothing in the under 500 range and condos. We desperately need those. The developers have been responding to the demand for housing by creating apartments over the last 10 years. Apartments are part of the life cycle of housing, but they don't answer the desire for people to own a property. And that's and really overall, the American dream is to own something and own property. And we've kind of forgotten that over the last 10 years. We really need to get back to that because it's detrimental for young people that are forming households and want to own a property. And if they can't, they're spending upwards of $2,000, if not more, a month on rent, which prevents them from saving it to put into a house and make a down payment. So it's causing a lot of problems that we're going to have to reckon with in the near future.
Well, and actually, that's an interesting point because I know Journal Sentinel a couple months back wrote an article about this, especially in, like you said, the life cycle of living accommodations as people, boomers, my parents, the age group of like this house is too big, but I don't want to go rent. Like it makes no sense. I've paid off my house. And so, so as far as like you said, there's this lack of new condos, and there's so few condos like in the Milwaukee area. And so what is the push and pull to like incentivize developers to make condos instead of apartments? Like, is there a government play there, or does it just come down to the market?
Yeah, yes, the government can definitely play a role. Everybody really plays a role. There's no silver bullet in this one. There certainly are some regulatory angles that we could take to reduce the amount of red tape involved in creating a subdivision, subdivisions or condos. The market lenders need to kind of look at what developments are a good risk. I think for the last 10, 15 years, they've kind of looked at it and said, this isn't, because of the Great Recession and so many banks got burned, they're kind of still, 15 years later, still kind of gun shy about it. So I think everybody needs to reevaluate the mix in the housing industry and realize that building apartments is not going to help anything.
Absolutely. All right. Well, one more reminder with the minute that we have left. Where can people get information about the Home and Garden Show if they want to go there this weekend?
Go to hgsmke.com and everything that you need is there. The schedule, how to buy tickets. You can get a discount on tickets from Callan Construction. Everything is there. The whole schedule for the cooking stage and the solution stage.
And if you're looking for me tomorrow, find a pergola with a woman who's drinking a beer and eating a burger because I'm going to pretend.
Yeah.
All
There
right.
you go.
Mike Rosikas, thank you so much for spending time with us. He is the president of the Greater Milwaukee Association of Realtors. Go check out that show. It'll be a good time. Maybe Mike and I need to stop by to get some ideas for our house. All right. We're going to take one more break. And then when we come back, I'll let you know my best April Fool's story. This is As Goes Wisconsin.
It'll all be alright. I'll be home tonight. I'm coming back home.
Direct from the Dairy State, it's Extra Sharp Weekends, a 3-hour block of Wisconsin-produced radio, Saturdays and Sundays from 11 a.m. till 2 p.m., featuring Raised in Wisco with Joe Clayfish and Danielle Fairman, The Cripescast with Charlie Behrens, and Under the Helmet with the Gravedigger, Gilbert Brown. Enjoy it by the slice or enjoy the whole darn block. Extra Sharp Weekends is radio so fresh, it squeaks. Listen in on the Civic Media Station or on the app. Monday morning at 8, don't miss Under the Helmet with the Gravedigger, featuring legendary Gilbert Brown and Earl Ingram. Football, life, and fun.
Earl, you've been driving a Yugo. They just gave you a brand new Ferrari with turbo boost. So enjoy it, brother.
Under the Helmet with the Gravedigger, Gilbert Brown and Earl Ingram. Monday morning at 8 on the Shaw, 540 AM and 101.1 FM WAUK.
Self-monitor your blood pressure in 4 easy-to-remember steps. Self-monitoring is power. Visit managerbp.org. Brought to you by the Ad Council, the American Heart Association, and the American Medical Association, in partnership with the Office of Minority Health and Health Resources and Services Administration.
Finish your high school diploma for you and your family. Visit finishyourdiploma.org to find free adult education centers near you. Brought to you by the Dollar General Literacy Foundation and the Ad Council.
Here's your updated forecast on the Shaw. Scattered thunderstorms likely this afternoon, otherwise overcast. Highs around 60, southerly winds 8 to 15 miles an hour. Overcast skies tonight, scattered thunderstorms likely, lows dip down to about 34. Cloudy skies expected tomorrow, a mixture of precipitation likely, daytime highs approaching 39. A dusting of snow tomorrow. For Civic Media, I'm meteorologist Eric Height. Currently, it's 57 degrees.
WAUK 540 AM, Brookfield's choice for news talk radio. Streaming 24/7 at WAUKradio.com.
She ain't real.
Welcome back to As Goes Wisconsin. I am Kristen Bry. She is Jane Madnair, and it is almost the weekend.
So nice to talk to Mike Ruzicka about the Home and Garden Show downtown. And I had completely forgotten when he talked about how banks pulled back after the crash in 2008. But when Paul and I were house hunting before we got married, and this was in 2002, and I had forgotten how much money banks wanted to give us. Because we asked for a certain amount, we asked for a certain amount, and they're like, no, you can have twice that.
Yeah.
And I said, no. Are you sure you don't want to borrow $300,000? Yeah, I'm really sure. I don't want to borrow $300,000. But you could get a whole lot more house.
I remember, because I was pretty, what would I have been, 22 in 2008 when everything came crashing down. So I certainly was not in like the real estate mindset.
I'm sure.
But I had friends, because that was when I was living in LA and I hadn't transferred to Berkeley yet. And so most of my friends in LA were older than me, and one worked in lending.
Oh.
And I remember, because they were all like 4 or 5 years older than me. And I do remember, and I didn't understand it because I was not one was never asked. I wasn't looking for loans or anything.
Right.
But I remember her, and she worked for like HB something, one of the big banks. And she got really mad at another one of our friends who is like kind of a floater as far as what his job ever was.
Okay.
And I still don't know the details of it, but I just remember that she was like, this is Brent, like, this is unbelievably unethical what you're doing. Because and I think what I think about it now and look back at it now that like I've seen The Big Short, is he got recruited by someone to be selling crappy loans.
Oh, man.
And she was on the side of like selling actual loans and knew the regulations and what was supposed to be happening. And I just remember her being really upset about it, me not understanding what they were talking about.
Yeah.
But looking like back at it, I was like, oh, that's exactly what they were talking about. Because I feel like, again, with The Big Short, they do a good job of showing that like there was like all these just like random schmoes.
Yes.
Because they were getting paid out on it, and just they didn't have very like obviously the credentials that they needed, and the whole system was just a farce.
Oh, it was. And unethical is only one of many words that could be applied to some of the shenanigans that went on with that. And if you've never seen The Big Short, it's an excellent, excellent film. Be prepared to be really ticked off after you watch it.
He's pretty good at that, Adam McKay.
Yeah.
Same thing as like after you see Vice, you're like, oh, yeah, like those guys were really bad too. On top of as bad as Trump feels, Bush and Cheney were really bad at everything that was going down as far as their ploy to get us involved in 2 very long, very expensive wars and the Patriot Act and everything. You're like, yeah, like that was bad. And now we're like, oh, well, like Bush, like he paints.
That's so God, I forgot about that.
It's like, oh, he's just like a sweet old man and he's not Trump. So, but you're like, oh, well, actually rewind. And so, yeah, wild times. But going in,
I want to hear your April Fool's story.
So this was a 2013, 2014. Do you remember the movie that came out? James Franco was in it, and it was called Spring Breakers.
Vaguely. I didn't see it.
I never ended up seeing it either. But it was supposedly god awful. And like it was, I didn't see it, but what I'm thinking of by memory is James Franco, like I think he had like a grill, but he was kind of like a seedy character that was in it, but it was mostly about these 4 young hot girls who were on spring break, and somehow they get like roped into like robbing banks or convenience stores or something.
As one does.
But it looked awful. And somehow my brother and his girlfriend at the time had accidentally gone and seen it. Like they were somewhere, they were on a trip, they would decide to go see a movie, and they didn't realize what the movie was about, and they went and saw it, and his girlfriend was just like offended how bad this movie was.
Oh, I'd probably like her.
And my brother, and I think I was on a text chain with the 3 of them, but then my brother texts me separately and goes, hey, I'm going to text you on the other thread and pretend like you've seen this movie and that you really liked it. And so I was like, okay, whatever. So we lead her on. So I was in on the joke. It didn't happen to me. So we lead her on for probably an hour about, I start defending it from like an art house like movie and like what the deeper meaning was, and I'm just making things up as far as why I liked this movie and was defending it. And he's with her in person. I'm in California, they're on vacation, and he's like kind of egging it on, and she's trying not to be rude to me, but is getting increasingly more and more angry
and agitated
and also like disappointed in me that I would even like this movie. And she like was starting to lose respect for me.
What kind of family am I dating into? This is wrong.
And I think I forgot at what point in the conversation we finally said, I was like, I haven't seen this movie, Natalie. Like, I'm like, I have no idea what we're talking about. And she obviously was embarrassed because she was so adamant about how could anyone like this movie.
And I would love to, if you could remember the defense you made of calling it an art house film about spring break. That's priceless.
I think, I'm pretty sure I made something about like the deeper meaning and how it's like an allegory for like this, that, or the other.
It's an allegory for a James Joyce story.
Yes, exactly.
Yes.
And so, see, I feel like that was his idea. I didn't come up with that, but I feel like that's like a harmless one. It's a little embarrassing because, like, why do you care so much on her part? Of like, why did you let this get under your skin? Because it's like not that big of a deal.
Well, again, what kind of family am I dating into? This is not good.
So, but I think I wish I had better ones. I wish I was Jim Halpert and had more funny pranks that I just don't have the
time.
I don't have the patience or the time. I think that sometimes it takes to pull off a really good prank. But
well, keep in mind, tomorrow is April Fool's.
Yeah.
April 1st.
Keep your eyes out.
That's right.
But we will be back
yourself.
On Monday. Bradley Whitford will be here at 1 p.m. So you should certainly come back and listen to that conversation. Otherwise, stick around for Dueling Tangents and the Chad Holmes Show. But we will be back on Monday at 11. In the meantime, have a wonderful weekend. Thank you for tuning in to a week's worth of excellent shows. This has been As Goes Wisconsin.